The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, I told you guys I was going to be excited because I thought we would hear from a defensive coordinator, Joe Whitt Jr., and he stole the show today. And we'll talk about a number of things that he had to say. We also heard from head coach Dan Quinn. We heard from 7 different players today, so we'll talk about what each of those players had to say. So 9 different individuals we heard from today with this team. Really excited. And look, they're doing it to me again. They're drawing me in. They're trying to get me excited. I am not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe this time around. I am holding my water. But, boy, I was cheesing, grinning from ear to ear today, listening to these guys talk. This is what they do to me every year. This is how they get me, but not this year. What I'm learning to do, and this is what I'm adjusting to this year because it's different. And I told you, it feels different. Wait for it. Wait for it. Because it is different. And because it is such, I am going to treat it that way. I am not going to do the thing that I always do, which is get excited, predict double-digit wins, and get let down and be disappointed. In order to enjoy this process, you have to go in. For me, I can't tell you how to enjoy your process. I know me, okay? My personality is one that I'm obsessive with things that I truly care about. And if I put expectations on this season, I'm going to be very disappointed if they do not live up to, meet, or exceed those expectations. Therefore, I cannot enjoy the success that they are having. I cannot enjoy the season for what it's going to be because I expect to have fun this year. For as bad as last year was, and as painful as last year was, and how uneventful and unexciting last season was, this year is going to be polar opposite. I am going to have fun watching this team again. I can feel it. The defense is going to be flying around. The offense is going, even if we're not scoring points, they're going to be exciting, I think. Okay? And we're going to be in ball games. I don't know if we're going to win very many of them, but we're going to be in the game, and that's all we can ask for is to be in the game in the fourth quarter with a chance. And I expect us to be in most games, maybe not all of them, but most of them this season. I expect us to be in that game in the fourth quarter with a chance to win. And so I just want to enjoy the ride. No expectations this year. I don't know what this season's going to look like. And I'm not putting any expectations on this team, and I'm not going to try to predict what this team is going to do and, set the bar here. I'm just going to let the season be what it is. Let it just naturally, organically happen. And then once, it's done and the season has met its conclusion, we can reflect on what we just saw. We obviously will be talking about it as we go through the season, right? And we'll be talking about all the things that transpire on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, hell, once the season starts and we got a program every day, Commanders Nightly News and, post-game shows, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be all over this stuff like we always are. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to allow this season to be what it is. We have no idea what we're going to be this season. And if it turns out to be one of those 2012 type seasons where you exceed all expectations, it comes out of nowhere, great. I'll enjoy it and I'll have fun like I did in 2012. If it turns out to be a season of growth and development, not very many wins, but you see the team getting better, I'll enjoy that for what it is. And if that amounts to 6 or 7 wins, sure, I'm going to have fun and I'm going to enjoy the process. We're going to talk about where we went wrong and how we can improve upon those things and what parts of the roster need to be improved greatly for us to take that next step. What did Jaden Daniels look like, et cetera, et cetera? Can we lean on this defense year in and year out? Was this a good unit? Was this a great unit? Can this unit continue to be that next year and so forth and so forth? We'll nitpick all of those things, but I'm going to enjoy the ride. So I'm not going to put any expectations on the season, but boy, they're trying to make me, right? Boy, they want me to. They want me to get excited. They're trying to suck me in, but I won't allow it to happen. I'm just going to enjoy it, right? Enjoy this process. Enjoy all of the things that are going to take place. And this is a really good group, man. I love the fact that Dan Quinn, and we'll talk more about this when we get to some of the things that were said, because you're hearing a lot of the same things being echoed from the players, and that's usually a good sign of messaging from within the building. When multiple players are kind of repeating the same thing over and over again, that means it's being preached to them inside the building and they're retaining that information, right? So, one of the things that was amiss quite a bit in the last regime is that there was no one on the same page. There was no synchronicity. One coach would say something, the other coach would come out and say something totally different, and then the head coach would undermine everybody, throw two coaches under the bus, and then have to come back and apologize, 2 days later, right? It was just a mess. Guys were all over the place. This is totally different. This is totally different. Everybody's on one accord. Coaches, players, front office, everybody is, again, kind of seamlessly transitioning into being a commander. And it's fun to watch this process. I enjoy this part of it. This part is hard. I've told you guys this, and a lot of you as fans probably haven't experienced this, but this is going to be tough. I hope you're prepared for what we're about to embark upon, because there are going to be a lot of fun moments. There are going to be a lot of times where we're going to be excited. We won a game we had no business winning. We blew somebody out, which we don't do very often here. But when you play defense and you force turnovers, there's a chance that you can whoop somebody's ass, right? If you're not turning it over yourself and you're creating turnovers and you're scoring points off those turnovers, you can beat somebody up pretty good. We're not accustomed to doing that because we don't create turnovers, we don't take care of the ball well enough, and we don't score points. And when you don't do those things, you don't blow people out. There may be 1 or 2 blowouts for us this season in terms of us actually doing the blowing out, right? This is going to be a very enjoyable season. So I'm looking forward to seeing, all of the twists and turns, but understand there are going to be some tough ones, right? Games that you felt like we had no business losing this game. You come after, you sit down, we start chopping it up after the game, and you lament plays that were missed, opportunities that were missed. And those are the growing pains of being a young team trying to figure it out. Is that, damn, you look back at the season and you missed the playoffs by 2 games, and you think about 3 games that we could have easily won if we would have done this, that, and this. And those are the ones that, those are the ones that sting. And you feel it in the moment. Like a couple of years ago, we felt it in the moment when we lost that Tennessee game, right? You knew if we missed the playoffs, that one hurts, right? We knew in the moment when we lost to Minnesota, we said that one stings. And if we don't make the playoffs, you'll look back on that game when you're up 10 points with 7 minutes to go in the game, and the other team only has 7 points, and you've been stymieing them all game long, and you've got the upper hand. You have to find a way to win, right? And when you blow those types of games and you make the type of mistakes that we made in those games, those are the ones that sting, and you remember those, right? So they're going to be some of those this year as well. All right. So just mentally prepare yourself for all that is to come. But I'm excited about the journey. I've been here a number of times as a fan in different sports, but never really have I been in this position with this team, which is my favorite team of all my professional teams, all of my sporting teams that I root for. This is my favorite one. I've told you that before. This one is at the top of the pecking order, and it's not even close. So this is the first time I've gone through this particular transition with this team, and I hope it looks like how my other teams fared in terms of their young development, getting to the dance a lot sooner than anybody anticipated, right? Getting there a bit early after putting some of the pieces of the puzzle in place, and then having sustained success, which is what my Grizzlies have had, the Braves have had, and I'm hoping the same can be said for my Washington Commanders. So I'm ready for this journey that we're going to go on this year, and I'm looking forward to all of the twists, the turns, the ups, the downs, the peaks, the valleys that come with it. I've been here before, and I just hope that this team is able to show the promise and the growth in specific areas that we need to see in order for the process to continue on its proper trajectory, right? You know, in every single case, whether it was the baby Braves or it was the Memphis Grizzlies, you have to have a star or two that performs as such in order for the process to take on its proper flight, right? And so, and you need veterans mixed in there too to help when you're young. You got to have the veterans in there to show. That was part of the thing that was missing. That was one of the key ingredients that I think we're finding out. We'll talk more about that as we, dive into some of these press conferences and what guys had to say. But I also want to start out by saying, shout out to my guy, Frankie Baby. Frank McLaughlin, thank you for the generous donation on Cash App. Really, truly do appreciate you. Wanted to make sure I showed you some love, man, because you continue to show me love and continue to support. So I want to make sure that you know that I am forever in debt and grateful to you for the continued contributions that you make to the Louie T Network. So aloha, my friend. Thank you so much for the love, my guy. So, with that said, let's dive in to what was said today and some of the biggest takeaways from the final OTA session as we head into the mandatory minis next week before that 6-week layoff heading into training camp, right? So let's start with Dan Quinn. DQ spoke today, and the first thing he was going to have to address was the Brandon McManus situation. So that he did. He talked about it, and they talked about this in-house as a group, as they should. And again, this is different for us because what Ronald Rivera would have done was he would have started with a pre-written statement about what they did with McManus. Then they would have asked him 3 questions, and he would have given 2 or 3 different answers, talked too damn much, contradicted himself, and put his foot in his mouth, right? Dan Quinn went with the company line. He didn't even start the press conference. He acted like it didn't even happen, which is what I would have done. Like, I know you're going to ask me about it, so I don't need to start the press conference off by giving a drafted statement, because guess what the next 3 questions are going to be? Brandon McManus related. Doesn't matter if I give you a statement. So how about I just jump in here, we talk, and then you guys fire away, because the first 3 questions are going to be Brandon McManus related anyway, which they were. So he pretty much said, look, it's under investigation, which I laughed when he said it because he's no longer on your team. So the investigation doesn't have anything to do with you, right? You can speak about this freely, about your decision that you made, because he's no longer on the team, right? It's one thing if he was still on the roster and the league was investigating and, all of that good stuff. And so, then you say, hey, league's investigating, it's a process. We want to respect that process. Like, you're not a detective working the case. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's when a detective's working an open case, I can't discuss the contents and the particulars of an open case. What I can do is give you, some generalizations from what we found thus far and what direction the case is moving in, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the case. He's not on the roster. So there is no open investigation, and he's not on your team. So they took that route, and I don't mind. I don't give a shit because he's not here. It doesn't matter to me. I just found that funny. That was the course of action that they decided to take, where, you know, we're going to do the whole, it's an open investigation, so I can't say too much about it. But he used that as an opportunity to have a lesson to the team. And what I gathered from the lesson was, you know, because he said it's not just about this particular situation, but it's kind of moving forward as a player, as a coach, as a parent. So I said, where are we going with this, DQ? And he's like, you know, in a roundabout way, he said a bunch of things to say pretty much this. Hey, just get out in front of it. Like, don't lie to us. Don't bullshit us. If you did something, don't let us find out from somebody on social media. Don't let us find out from somebody filing a police report. And this is how we find out, because we're going to be more pissed off if we find out about it from somebody but you. So if you know you got into some shit and it may come back out and come back around later, you might want to divulge that information to us so we're not caught off guard. Because if you don't, this is what could happen to you. So let this be an example to the rest of y'all that if you catch yourself getting into some shit, and look, we human, we make mistakes, and you get caught up, you need to come tell us what the hell is going on so we can start figuring out solutions as to how we're going to go about it. So should the shit hit the fan, right? And that's essentially what he said, is like, and I tell our kids this all the time. It's not the actual act itself that's going to get you in the most trouble if you don't tell the truth. Now, if, you know, we catch you in the act of doing something you're not supposed to do, then the act is going to get you in trouble, the most trouble, right? Because now you don't have a chance to lie about it. But it's not the act itself that usually gets you in the most trouble. It's the cover up, right? It's the lying and trying not to get in trouble, trying not to tell the truth. That's what ultimately gets you in the most trouble. We tell our kids this all the time. Just tell the truth. Look, you're going to get in trouble either way, but you're going to get in less trouble if you just tell us the truth. You're going to get in even more trouble if you try to lie and cover it up and we find out you were lying about it. And that's essentially what Dan Quinn told the team. Like, this man knew that he got into some shit. He didn't tell us this. And look, let's be honest. Had he told them what he had gotten himself into, would they have signed him? No, they wouldn't have signed him, and he knew that, right? But Dan Quinn was like, bro, we didn't find out about this shit till May the 27th. You know how pissed off we were? And so we got rid of him on June the 3rd, right? So all that meant was they gathered more information. They saw the severity of the situation. They said, we don't want to be a part of this. We don't want to stick by Brandon through this ordeal. He didn't come to us and let us know we were caught off guard. And we don't need this shit. So let's just cut him and we'll move forward, right? That's what they did. Quinn also talked about getting 11 on 11 work. So this was the first time. I know you guys probably saw Jeremy Reeves's tweet yesterday when he said, man, it felt so good to finally play real football again. Because, you know, the 7-on-7s, the individual work that you're doing, the walkthroughs, that's what the first two phases of the OTAs are about. It's not any 11 on 11 work. You don't have all 11 offensive players, all 11 defensive players on the field at once. It's usually 7-on-7. And so this is the first time all offseason that, you know, you're starting to really simulate football acts with all 11 bodies on each side of the football on the field at the same time. So it's starting to feel like football. It doesn't really actually replicate football until they put the pads on. But this is as close as you're going to get until that time takes place in late July when training camp gets underway. So Jeremy Reeves is like, man, it felt good. You remember he got injured, hadn't been able to do this for a while. So he's like, man, it just feels good to be playing, you know, football again. So Quinn talked about playing 11 on 11, getting that work in. Also talked about special teams, which is why they had to sign a kicker because they actually were working special teams for the first time really this off season, right? Where you're putting the teams on the field, you're running down on kickoffs, new rules, right? So now you got to start practicing, pop-up kicks, and got to start practicing, lining up in that certain, way that you have to, how far away you're going to be from the opposing team. They got to get accustomed to all of that new stuff, right? So they're doing that now, turning that into muscle memory, turning that into something that they get used to and accustomed to. So that's important. Like, you don't think about that. Normally, special teams is standard. It's the same thing you do every year. You may have a twist or two here or there, but it's usually generally the same. Now it's going to be different this year because you're implementing totally different schemes. You got different way of going about it. You have a different formation and how you line up, how you rush, things of that nature. You're going to have to return kicks now. How, your return team is going to have to be different. Your coverage units have to be different. So kind of spoke to that a little bit. Excuse me. He was asked about Emmanuel Forbes, and I think that's just going to be a continued discussion all season into the summer, is how is Emmanuel Forbes progressing? Because when you spend the first round pick on a guy, he's going to dominate the conversation. And he didn't have a great first season last year as a rookie. And, part of the reason that this crew was deemed to be so impactful is because of their ability to get the most out of defensive players and their ability to take the football away. And that was Forbes' calling card, or as Dan Quinn called it, his superpower. And so they're not going to bail on the kid just because he's 170 pounds, right? 175 pounds. And, Quinn said, yeah, he's put on some weight and he's doing really well. I'm like, you seen the same picture we just saw on social media a couple of weeks ago that's circulating that went viral? You saw that same picture and you're going to tell us he's gained some weight? Maybe he did. All right. Maybe he did put on a few pounds, right? But it's negligible, man. Like, he's not 185 pounds now, right? So, I mean, if you tell us he gained some weight, he gained some weight. Even if it was only 3 pounds, that's fine. At the end of the day, can he play or can he not play? And he's always been small his entire life. I don't think it's going to change. Can he play in their scheme? Can he be more productive? This is the thing, can he be more confident? He lost his confidence last year. Confidence is such a big part of being successful at any level as an athlete. I can tell you, when I was at my very worst as an athlete, I had no confidence. My confidence was shot. I was nervous. I didn't know about, what was I going to do if this happened or that happened. I was unsure of myself. That's when you play the worst. When you're ultimately confident, the swag is on 1,000 and you're like, bro, it doesn't matter. Like, I step into the batter's box and I'm like, bro, there's nothing you can throw me that I'm not about to smash. Like, I'm locked in, So if you're going to throw a curveball, I'm sitting on it and I'm going to turn on that bitch. You throw me a fastball, I'm on it. Like, what you want to do? Even if I'm late, I'm spraying it the other way. I'm finding green grass. What you trying to do, right? When your confidence is at 1,000, you're a different animal. His confidence was in the toilet last year. So if they can restore that, get him to play the kind of football that he was playing at Mississippi State, we could have something on our hands. So he talked about Forbes and his ability to take it away. You can't coach that. Either you're a guy that takes it away or you're not. Either you're a guy that hunts the football or you're not. He is. And you need that trait, and they covet that, and he has it, and they're going to try to get it out of him. So Dan Quinn talked about next week, the mandatory minis. And he talked about how that's going to simulate a normal work week. So as we get into the season, the mandatory minis that they're going to have next week is going to simulate Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of a normal work week, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of a normal work week. They'll be at mandatory minis next week, I think Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Normally, coaches give them that last day off. They knock that third day off for, good behavior, essentially, great practices, getting the job done. They're pleased with their performance. Hey, you guys get that last day off as a reward. We'll see if that takes place with this new group and whether they try to take full advantage of every single day that they have, or if they say, you guys have worked your asses off. We're proud of you. Love the progress that's been made. Go ahead, take that last day off. We'll see you guys in late July, right? We'll see what actually happens with that. But Quinn said that it's going to replicate what you would see from them in a normal, week preparation for a game and an opponent Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if that's the case, you would think they would use all 3 days, but we will see. He talked about Jamon Davis as an edge rusher, and boy, oh boy. If you want to talk about a red hot topic today, that was at the top of the list of the things discussed by multiple people, mainly Dan Quinn, Joe Whitt Jr., and Jamon Davis himself. I'm starting to get excited. Am I wrong for getting excited to see Jamon Davis as a pass rusher? I actually think he can do it. I remember somebody asked me, maybe it was like a month and a half ago, like, you think Jamon Davis is going to play edge rusher? And I'm like, nah. He'll be a backer, but he'll get some chances to rush off the edge like an edge rusher, but he won't be primarily playing edge rusher. And I still don't think that's going to be the case. But I think he's going to get a hell of a lot of snaps as an edge rusher, like lined up in a 2-point stance, off the edge, rushing the quarterback. I really think he's going to get an opportunity to get after the QB, man. I'm actually excited for him, because what about this entire time? What if he was out of position? What if he was really, truly, because I think a lot of us have felt this way. I can't speak for you guys. I know there have been times where I've said, why don't you just let Jamon rush? He seems like he's more comfortable as a blitzer getting after the quarterback. There were times where we turn him loose, like the Detroit game on the first possession where he sacks Jared Goff. And, we just beat Jacksonville and we were juiced up. They come out, get a 3-and-out. Jamon gets the sack and they got a punt. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, we about to take these boys and we about to dispose of them. And obviously, everything that could go wrong went wrong after that possession. Like, nothing else went right for us in the first half. And we were down like 20-0 at intermission, but or 22-0 or whatever. It was bad. Charles Leno gave up the sack, forced fumble for a safety, and yikes. Yeah, it was a mess. We had blown coverages, you name it. We did it in that Lions game, especially in the first half. But whatever, I digress. He's looked comfortable, more comfortable at times as a rusher than as a linebacker, dropping into coverage or dropping into space. And I just really love the fact that they're giving this thing a real go. Like, I don't know if there's going to be any real fruit bared from this, but I definitely want to see them plant the seeds and water it and give it a chance, right? I'm excited to see if this yields anything, right? I think he can do it. And even if Jamon, only notches 3.5, 4 sacks this season, that's great. Add that to the ledger of the amount of sacks that we have as a team, right? We need them from everywhere because we don't have any true edge rushers other than Dorrance Armstrong, right? We really don't have any real true difference makers up front from an edge rushing standpoint. Our sacks are going to have to come from being a team. Individually, Frankie Louvu can get to the quarterback, and hopefully, and Dorrance Armstrong can, as guys that are going to be rushing quite prolifically. Maybe we can add Jamon Davis to that list. I don't know. We'll see. Clearly, we have the guys inside, and you add Johnny Newton to that mix along with the Bama Wall, and you love what they can provide for us. But from an edge rusher standpoint, it's not a lot there. So you're going to need guys like Frankie Louvu and hopefully Jamon Davis to step up. I'm really excited to see what Jamon does in this role. And Dan Quinn talked about Jamon Davis kind of taking on, that extra added responsibility of trying to put forth the effort, going off the side, working with Ryan Kerrigan, putting in the extra reps, because again, he's still playing linebacker too, right? So when he's got an opportunity, he's getting in reps with, RK and getting those reps to try to get better as an edge rusher. So I love to hear it. DQ also talked about competition at kicker, which we knew. Sometimes these dudes don't be doing their homework. Like, I think it was JP Finley, and I love JP. But JP, I think he only thought that this kid, Ramiz Ahmed, is just a kickoff specialist because, that's primarily what he did in Green Bay. And Dan Quinn's like, no, he does everything. He kicks field goals and he does all of that stuff. Like, he can do it all, right? I'm like, come on, JP. You didn't know he did all of that? Like, you didn't do any homework on this kid, right? It took you 5 seconds to figure out what Ramiz Ahmed brings to the table, right? But like I said, told you guys yesterday, it's going to be an open kicking competition. I don't expect them to just say, oh, okay, we got Ramiz Ahmed. He's our kicker, and they're going to move forward like that. You're going to see them bring in at least one more kicker, I think, throughout the process. Once teams start cutting bait and cutting loose, because I told you there are teams around the league that have 3 kickers on their roster right now. I remember Detroit, I want to say it was last offseason, had 3 kickers on their roster this time last year. And then right as they got into maybe the first week of training camp, or maybe right prior to it, they cut 2 of the kickers and decided on one guy. And we picked up one of the kickers that they cut loose, which was the former Charger kicker, the Money Badger, right? The Money Badger. I can't remember his name, but Michael Badgley. We brought him in camp last year, if you remember, but he was garbage, And so Joey Slab, beat him out easily, and we moved on. But excuse me. I think you're going to see a similar situation when somebody cuts a kicker that they think is worth giving a opportunity to. They're going to bring that guy in here and they're going to compete. But like Dan Quinn said, sometimes you just need a chance, right? I always just go back to the Cowboys kicking situation last year. They waited till the very last minute to get a kicker. I remember I was making fun of them. And then, they get this USFL kicker. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's going to be trash. And I was hoping he would be garbage. And then the dude practically didn't miss. Brandon Aubrey, I think his name was. Dude practically didn't miss a damn kick last year. He was so damn good, right? Like, why can't we get lucky like that? Well, I don't know if that was luck. They did their homework. And, a lot of people are like, yo, June 16th, John Bates becomes available. Or not John Bates, but the Bates kid becomes available. Maybe they go after him. We'll see. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but I expect them to add somebody to the mix. And changing the OTA schedule, that was something that came up. I must have missed that. I don't know how I wasn't privy to that information, but Quinn was asked about it. Some of the players were asked about it. I think the media kind of figured out that Joe Whitt probably, that wasn't a good question to ask him because he really doesn't give a shit, honestly. They may have even asked him and he might have had a quick little response for it or whatever. But this question was brought up multiple times about the potential OTA schedule changing and them pushing it closer to the start of the season. So almost as if we're going to give you all the offseason to yourself and then have you rev up the engine as you head into training camp. I think if I'm a player, I would actually prefer, and I'm not, so I can't say. I actually think that I would prefer it the way that it currently is, because from a coach's standpoint, I think I would as well, because as a coach, you want to be able to lay eyes and hands on your players. You don't want to go 3 months without seeing these dudes, because not that you can't trust them, but that's a long time to go without seeing your guys. And I think it's better when you build up the camaraderie earlier in the offseason so guys can establish relationships with each other. You can get to know your teammates, especially if you have new ones like we did. We had so many new teammates. You need to introduce them to one another. And if you bring them together early in the offseason, then when they go away, they can still have contact with each other, go out, get to know one another, meet each other's families, et cetera, et cetera. Then you come back to the facility. I think it's almost like having a check-in is how the offseason is set up right now. And I think look, for veteran players, it'll probably be better to have it where everything's pushed back towards training camp. Gives you more time to spend with your family. You don't have to worry about traveling back and forth from where you live to come be a part of, the team and be a part of, the OTAs and things of that nature. But if I'm a coach, I want to see my players. I want to lay hands on my players. I want to get everybody acclimated to what it is we're doing beforehand and, kind of break up the offseason and the monotonous nature of the offseason, not let it just be this one big period and then you show up at the end. And I think you're going to have more guys, especially the ones that don't have the type of discipline that's necessary. You have guys showing up out of shape, especially the big guys, whereas I think the program, the way it's set up, keeps those guys in top, tip-top shape. You give guys, 3 months to themselves with no interruptions, who knows what you're going to get. I could be overreacting. The players might want it that way. We'll see what they decide to do. It's not a big deal, honestly speaking, but we'll see what actually happens with that. And then he talked about Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin at safety. How they're helping out one another, how they're communicating. But he said, he didn't want to just limit it to those two guys. He talked about all the guys out there communicating and doing a really good job. But those two in particular, I think it's pretty safe to say that those two guys are going to be, two of the starters. As Quinn said, they're going to have a lot of 3 safety looks when you're playing 3 safeties at one time. And he brought up some other guys that have versatility, but I wonder where Defoe fits into all of this, or does he even, right? Because initially, if we come out in a 2 safety look, it's Jeremy Chin and it's gonna be Quan Martin. Like those are the 2 safeties that are on the field. Now you go to a 3 safety look, Chin comes down into the box as a Buffalo nickel down around the line of scrimmage, and you add a 3rd safety onto the field. Who is that guy going to be? Is that going to be Defoe? Is that going to be Percival Butler? Who knows, right? Hard to say right now, but it's a damn shame Defoe got injured and lost his spot and doesn't look like he's getting that back. Now, he could play a pivotal role as that 3rd safety, but right now, or it could be the nickel that we drafted because he's technically a safety as well as a nickel corner. But I'm gonna assume that Mikey Sainristil is a nickel corner. He's a corner, but really he's a safety. That's what he was at Michigan. He was a safety that could drop down and play nickel, right? So could he be the technically the 3rd safety on the field? We'll see. I just know a guy like Defoe, damn. Everything was all good just a year ago. Anyway, and then finally he had a light moment. And look, he was dead ass when he called Tyler Biadasz badass. That's his nickname for him, badass. And he talked about why he's a badass, playing with sprained ankle last year, gutting it out, being a leader. Showing his grit and determination and leadership by example, by playing through an injury. And so he's like, that's the kind of guy I want on my team. And that's part of the reason why he's here in Washington. And, they took, the media likes to run with stuff like that. So they had a good laugh. And then they had an even bigger one when they told Tyler Biadasz that he called him that. And he said, I like that nickname. And we'll talk more about that when we get to Tyler Biadasz. But that was the extent of what head coach Dan Quinn had to say. So now we get into I guess that was an appetizer of sorts. This is the main event right here. This is the entree right here with Coach Joe Whitt Jr. And remember, I told y'all I said I can't wait to hear from him. I said I don't know if it's going to be this period or the next period, but I expect to hear from him. And I said I think we're going to hear from him this time because we heard from Cliff Kingsbury the last time. So I was like, it's only right that we get the defensive coordinator now. And I said, I can't wait to hear from this guy because he had me charged up. When we heard him speak at his introductory press conference, he had me charged up. He had me ready to go, right? I can't get enough of listening to this guy talk about coaching defense. And he's been waiting for this opportunity. You already know, and I told y'all this the first time I heard him speak, he's not going to miss. He's been waiting for this opportunity. Just think about it from this perspective. Think about you waiting for your opportunity, knowing that you've put in the work and you've been ready for a very long time and you've been passed over and over again. And you told yourself, when I get this opportunity, I'm going to murder this shit. Well, that's essentially what Joe Whitt Jr. has done. He said, I was ready after we won the Super Bowl in Green Bay. I was ready to be a defensive coordinator then. Do you know when the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl? It's like 2010, right? Okay. He's like, I was ready to be a D coordinator back then. Fast forward 13 years, and now he's getting an opportunity, right? So he's going to murder this shit. He's going to absolutely destroy this. I just hope he doesn't do it so well that he ends up being a head coach here in 2 or 3 years, because he's going to kill it here. Kill it. So listening to Joe Whitt Jr., right? He talks about, the first thing he talked about was Emmanuel Forbes taking the hard coaching, because he told us from the jump, I coach hard, right? My dad was a coach. And my dad was a very, very stern communicator. I watched him, interact with players and how he did it. And, we're usually, splitting images of our parents, whether good or bad. We take traits from our parents, and that's how you learn, right? You watch how people that are, older than you, that you respect, you watch how they do it, and you put some of that into your game. Well, he got a lot of his coaching style from his dad, and he's been very, very adamant that this is who I am. I demand, perfection. I demand guys work hard and give me everything they've got, but it's going to pay off. And he's like, on game days, I'm not that same dude, right? I'm hard on you in practice because once it gets to game day, it should be easy. Now I'm out here trying to get you to where you need to be. So when it comes to the game, we can just communicate. We don't need to be fussing, yelling, screaming, none of that shit. Now we just need to communicate and do the things that we know we're capable of doing because we did it in practice, right? So he talked about Forbes taking the coaching, and he also talked about Forbes making progress. And he said, look, I'm not going to BS y'all. He said, if he wasn't playing well, I tell y'all, like, I'm not going to BS y'all because he was a former first round pick, or, I'm going to give y'all coach speak. That ain't my style. If a dude ain't cutting it and I feel some type of way, and I think that's an old school way of handling it. Because remember, Jack Del Rio did the same thing, right? Jack would tell you quick, fast, and in a heartbeat, yeah, he ain't getting the shit done. And sometimes they use the media as a tool to get guys right. And Joe Whitt Jr. seems like one of those dudes. He's going to tell you to your face. You're not going to find out through the media. So anything you hear in the media, you would have already heard it from him once or twice already. So it's not going to come to you as a surprise, right? But even then, he's like, things that he needs to work on, he being Emmanuel Forbes, he's like, those are personal conversations between me and him. I'm not telling y'all what we working on and what he's got to get better at, right? He talked about loving Frankie Louvu, and I'm telling y'all, y'all gonna love him. If y'all haven't watched Frankie Louvu play, there was a reason that I had such a strong affinity for him and wanted him here in Washington. You can't watch Frankie Louvu and walk away unimpressed. You can't watch Frankie Louvu and say to yourself, oh, he ain't playing hard. There's no way. You're going to watch Frankie Louvu, and he's going to be moving at a different speed than everybody else on the field. You're going to watch Frankie Louvu, and he's going to play with a passion that few guys play the game with. And you're going to watch Frankie Louvu, and you're going to say, that is the epitome of what we want a Washington Commander to look like, play like, and what he represents on the field. You're going to love Frankie Louvu. And we learned today what his nickname is. It's Oos. So if you ever hear anybody, a player, a coach, talk about Oos, you're talking about Frankie Louvu, right? So he loves him some Frankie Louie. He went on about a good minute and a half, mini rant about how he just loves Frankie Louie, how he's a joy to coach, how Frankie told him, hey, anything you need me to do, coach, just tell me and I'll do it. And he's like, this dude goes 110 miles an hour. Everything that he does is at full warp speed. And he's like, I love it. He's the definition of arrive, fast and violently and physically, all of that stuff that they talk about. We're going to be a run and hit team. Frankie Louie embodies that, right? Coach Whitt, I think a lot of fans are going to love this part of what Coach Whitt did here and what he said. He's the first coach I think I've ever heard admit this. Coaches act as if they're oblivious to this or that they don't try to gain an advantage through the media. He's the first coach that admitted, hey, I'm watching other teams' social media. I'm watching what they say, see if they're going to give us some tips as to what they're going to do. Because I know a lot of fans that I've encountered over the years are like, why would they say that? They're giving away an advantage. They're telling the other team, they're talking like, do you know how many people were upset at B-Rob, a week or two ago when he said, hey, we might be running no huddle? They're like, oh, why did you do that? Why are you telling people what we're going to do? That was so stupid. I'm reading the comments, and there were people just going off about B-Rob. That was so dumb. He needs to watch what he says. They were getting so upset, and I'm like, bro, it's May. Ain't nobody paying attention to what's being said in May. Well, Joe Whitt Jr. is like, bullshit. I'm paying attention to what's being said in May and in June and in July and in August and September and so forth. And he's like, you ain't going to get it from me. All right. So they asked him about, what roles guys like Jamon Davis may play or Frankie Louie or Jeremy Chin. And he's like, nah, not doing that. And again, this is old school way of thinking because Jack Del Rio, remember, Jack wouldn't even look. Don't come at Jack with this was the only thing I loved about Jack. Jack wasn't giving you jack shit. Okay. Don't ask Jack about no game planning, what you gonna try to do to take this guy away. Jack will talk in vague, terms like, yeah, this guy's really good and it's gonna take a lot to stop him. That was the extent of what you was gonna get out of Jack. Jack wasn't going to tell you what they were implementing, how they were going to go out and try to, attack this team. This is what we got to do. Nah. And Joe Whitt Jr. is on that same shit. Like, he said, the advantage we have right now is that they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know what we about to do out here. They don't know how we're going to use our players. So why the hell would I tell them? Why would I take away the advantage that we currently have? They'll find out in week 1 what we out here doing and how we utilizing guys, and then they'll have to adjust and they'll have the film then. But until then, I ain't saying shit. And he reiterated again, said, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, right? I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm just telling y'all, I'm not giving away any secrets or any tips, right? If they want to learn about our scheme, they're going to have to watch film and figure the shit out on their own. And they won't get it from me. So, yeah, I love that. I know a lot of fans are going to love that. He talked about Jamon Davis as a pass rusher, and he essentially said, look, our job is to put the best 11 guys on the field. And if Jamon Davis is one of those dudes as a pass rusher, then that's what we're going to do. And he said, I love the effort that he's putting in right now and the work. He said, I can't tell you how much we covet big, strong, fast players. And he's big, strong, and fast. And because of that, we want to utilize those guys in as many ways as we can. And this guy's up for the challenge. He enjoys rushing the quarterback, which was really good to hear. And unlike Emmanuel Forbes, remember we talked about Forbes returning punts? I've heard from multiple sources that, were out there at the practices. He doesn't want to do, returning kickoffs or whatever. He was back there fielding kickoffs or punts or whatever. They're like, he don't want to do that shit. He does not want any parts of that. He looked uncomfortable. He was just going through the motions. He don't want to do that shit. And again, That's a want to. Returning kickoffs, because it takes a crazy person, a madman, to be comfortable fielding a punt, knowing that dudes are running 21 miles an hour to take your head off. And you got to focus on the ball. You don't look down. It's almost like being up high and you're afraid of heights. And they tell you, don't look down, right? Excuse me, as a punt returner, you got to look up at the football. Don't look down. Don't look at the rush coming. Don't look at these guys coming to take your head off. You focus on that football, right? Take a peek to see where they at, whether you need to fair catch it or not. But you can't be worried about, oh, are they going to hit me? You just got to catch the football, right? So it takes a special individual to want to return kickoffs and punts. Emmanuel Forbes is not a special individual in that way. He ain't built for that. And I don't think any of us really want to see that. That feels like a car wreck waiting to happen, right? His 170-pound frame soaking wet, with guys running down there 20 miles an hour trying to crush him. That feels like a cracked rib for him waiting to happen. We don't need that. We don't need that. Coach Whitt talked about Bobby Wagner's impact, and he talked about him being a leader. He talked about having, leaders on the field and in the locker room, which as a coach, you covet. Listening to all of this leadership talk, I'll save that for when we get to like Jamon Davis or somebody else who brought it up. He talked about an example of Bobby Wagner's impact. And he's like, he's installing the defense and he may do it in a sloppy way. And Wagner may see a more efficient way to do it. And he's like, hey, coach, what about if we do it this way? And he's like, yeah, he said, this is our defense. You know how refreshing that is, by the way, to hear a coach say, this isn't my defense or Coach Quinn's defense. It's our defense. It's their defense. It's the coaching staff's defense. It's the players' defense. We're all in this together. This is our defense. That wasn't how it went last year or the year before that or the year before that or the year before that. Especially last year on offense, where the offense wasn't the team's offense. It was one guy's offense. And if you didn't do it his way, then to hell with you, right? It's so refreshing to hear. They've preached to us all offseason that we're going to utilize players in the best spots for them to be successful, and to hear them continue to harp on that. To not just have that be empty words, but actually have actionable steps behind that. It warms my heart. I'm going to be honest with you. It warms my heart. Jeremy Chin and being a chatty defense, he talked about Jeremy Chin and him being one of those vocal guys that they're going to rely on defensively, but not just him. He just said, in general, we need to be a chatty defense. Everybody needs to be talking because we need to communicate. The one thing I've heard about sorry defenses over the years more than anything else, the one fiber, the one piece of yarn or string that I could always pull on that would help a defense unravel every year that I've watched bad defenses here in Washington. Communication. Going all the way back to Mr. Striking Iron and Cracking Skulls, right? Greg Minuski. All he used to talk about after we would get torched for 270 yards rushing on the ground is we got to communicate better. Or after the Colts would run a simple, mesh concept underneath and 6 guys will be wide open and Andrew Luck could pick one because he had everybody open on the play because nobody checked anybody because we didn't communicate. Or we're giving up deep bombs, with Jack Del Rio early in the season. We're not communicating. You hear that so often. And this is the thing on defense. All it takes is one guy to not do his job. We saw it last year, right? 10 guys could be in perfect position, or all 11 for that matter could be in perfect position. And then the one guy that's supposed to make the tackle misses the tackle, and now you got a 54-yard touchdown run on your hands. It doesn't take much to have a defensive play go awry. Just one person has to not know the coverage or be confused. Oh, I thought we were in this, right? And somebody's running wide open down the field. It doesn't take much. So he's like, no, we got to be a chatty bunch. We got to be a chatty defense. Everybody needs to be talking. Everybody needs to be communicating. We need to over-communicate what's going on. No one should be confused as to what we're in, what we're doing, and how we're going to do it, right? So I love that. I love that a lot. He did talk about some of the young guys. Remember, I said I wanted to hear from him about, Emmanuel Forbes, and he told us, I'll be honest with you, he's improving. We like what we're seeing from him. He's taking the hard coaching. He's like, and I'm not going to BS you. If he's not playing well, if he's not doing the things we need him to do, I'll let you know. And he talked about these young guys, Jordan McGee. He's like, he's not like a rookie. He is carrying himself like a veteran. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. We've put him out there. And I already told you, he's the future of the middle linebacker position. Jordan McGee is. And he's definitely capable of playing at a high level. I'm excited for him. Like, he's waiting in the wings for his opportunity next year, potentially. I'm not going to rule out Bobby Wagner coming back and playing again next year. If he kills it this year and he plays at a high level and the will and the, determination to play is still there for him and there's mutual interest, I can see Wagner coming back next year if he kills it this year. But even if he doesn't, I think Jordan McGee is soaking all of this up. He's taking that coaching from the staff, but, probably even more importantly, Bobby Wagner and the mentorship. And I think he's going to continue to grow. And he's already showcasing that he's not, a regular Joe Schmo rookie. Like, I struggle with why it took so long for us to fix the linebacker position. It's just crazy that and again, we don't know that it's completely fixed, right? But just the attention to the position itself. Like, even if it's not fixed, even if it turns out to still be broken, at least it's broken with some sort of talent, and at least you tried. Like, they didn't even try. The last group just threw out John Bostic and David Mayo and said, hey, we're good at linebacker, and just dropped in, Jamon Davis, let Cole Holcomb leave as if we had it like that, went and got Cody Barton and said, no, we're fine at linebacker. No, we're good. And we still got Mayo. We're fine. Like, seriously? That's what we're doing? Milo Eifler? That's your answer. Milo Eifler. And he talked about Dominique Hampton as well, the rookie safety out of UW. He said he's putting in a lot of, they're putting a lot of stuff on his plate. And he said that he's responding well to all of it. He's taking well to coaching. And where have we heard this before about them putting a lot on a player's plate? Where have we heard that before? They did it to Jamon Davis in his rookie season. The difference is Dominique Hampton is not going to be relied upon this year to be a key contributor defensively. So you can put a lot on his plate. You can see what he can handle. And then if he's pressed into action, I already told you what he's brought in here to do. He's brought in here to be Jeremy Chinn 2.0. Now, I can't tell you if Chinn's going to be back after this season, if he's going to maximize his value in his defense and then try to get paid elsewhere. I can't tell you what is ultimately going to become of Jeremy Chinn here in Washington. But what I can tell you is if he does leave, Dominique Hampton is literally his doppelganger, and they're priming him to be ready to step in should Jeremy Chinn have something happen to him this year or even next year, right? They're putting a lot on his plate to see what he can handle and getting him ready, right, for that opportunity when it should arise, whether it's this year or next year. I love it. Love it. Love to hear that we're seeing growth out of the young guys. Can't wait till Johnny Newton is added to this conversation. Coach Joe Whitt Jr. also talked about the staff and wanting to give them credit. And he said, look, one of the things that he hasn't seen enough said about was the staff. And defensively, I think as fans, we've talked a ton about the staff, right? We've talked about being excited about one of the best staffs we've seen assembled here in Washington in quite some time. I don't think any of us knew how good the staff was in 2013 under Kyle and Mike Shanahan. Clearly, we know now, seeing how many of them have blossomed into head coaches, and really good ones, I may add, in this league. But we didn't know that at the time. We feel really good about this staff. We don't know how good this staff is, but for the first time in a long time, I feel confident to say this. There are probably 2 or 3, maybe even upwards of 4 future NFL head coaches on this staff. Watch what I tell you. Watch what I tell you. There are at least 2 to 3 future NFL head coaches on this staff. And we could never say that about a Jay Gruden staff. I think he might have had Sean McVay as a holdover, right? I think he might have had McVay for a couple of years, because we were talking about choosing Sean over Jay, and was like, well, Jay just came off of 2 straight winning seasons. You can't get rid of Jay, right? But Jay never really had that, because McVay was a holdover from the Shanahans, and clearly Ron never had anybody even remotely close to even being promoted from a positional coach to a coordinator. We didn't even have that shit here, right? Let alone a coordinator to head coach. So, yeah, man. He talked about all of the guys that they've brought in and how good of a job that they're doing. You know, he talked about Simmons and the new defensive backs coach that we got from the Chargers. And he talked about, Norton as a linebacker coach. And he talked about Daryl Tapp on the defensive line. And so this is a really good staff, man. As I've talked about when we were assembling this staff, it's a really good mix of veteran teachers, but also young, exuberant, guys that come in with a zest for the game, who are former players, who get it. It's a good mix of young coaches and older coaches that have, sage wisdom. It's a well put together staff. It's kind of like the roster in a sense, right? Really well put together, right? In terms of the roster, I think what we're finding out is that we didn't have enough veteran leaders with the Rivera group. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then I think the quote of the day, you could argue that this is the quote of the offseason thus far, but it's hard to top doing hard shit with good people. That's a pretty hard bar. I don't know if you can top that, right? But this might be 1B to doing hard shit with good people. This is Joe Whitt Jr., right? Defensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Quote, bar of the day, bar of the offseason, you could argue. Quote, we don't have 11 starters. We have 17 to 18 guys. We're going to go out there. We're going to have a deep crew to go out there and whoop people. Close quote. Let me read that one again, okay? Because I need you to understand the significance of this. We don't have 11 starters. We have 17 to 18 guys we're going to go out there with. We're going to have a deep crew to go out there and whoop people. Closed quote. Okay? Like, when he said that, I had to rewind it like 3 times, like he had just dropped this insane double entendre, triple, entendre, quadruple entendre that almost went over my head, and I had to listen to it 3 times to let that shit resonate. So I got the bar, right? This man said, we don't have 11 starters. We coming at your ass in waves. We're going to put packages out there. You know how many years? Y'all can vouch for this. Y'all who have been here can vouch for this. Do you know how many times I cried and I begged and I pleaded for packages where you could get guys that had a specific skill set on the field? I said, it's not illegal. It's not illegal to take a guy like the linebacker from Michigan. What was his name? Khalil Hudson. Remember, I used to talk about this all the time. It's not illegal to take Khaleke Hudson, who was great around the line of scrimmage, who was a great blitzer in college. He played like that star position at Michigan. It's not illegal to take Khaleke Hudson and get a package where he's on the field. It's not illegal. It's not illegal to put together a package where you put all pass rushers. Hell, even if that means taking Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen off the field. If you got 4 dudes that you think can get after the quarterback all at one time, it's not illegal to put them all on the field at the same time. They used to do it in Seattle. They called it the NASCAR package. I see teams do this shit all the time, and we never, ever did it. And I used to say, well, why can't we do some of those things? Why don't we have specific blitz packages? You know who was one of the inventors of the different packages? That was us. Remember, a lot of y'all are too young to understand and remember. We were the innovators once upon a time. We were the gold standard. Richie Pettibone was one of the first defensive coordinators to have different package groups. Nickel and dime. He had a penny package, right? He had all these different packages where we put different personnel on the field to match what the other teams were doing. He was one of the first coordinators in the league to do that shit. And then somehow the league caught up to us, passed us by, and we never made the adjustment. How we start some shit and then we just don't do it. Well, that is over now. Because Joe Whitt Jr. said, I don't have 11 starters. Don't ask me nothing about no damn starters. When we get to the end of training camp, when we get to the end of the preseason, don't ask me nothing about no starters because I got 11 or 18 guys that I'm going to send after your ass in different packages to raise some hell and whoop some ass. We rolling deep. I told you they trying to get me, man. They trying to get me. They trying to make me, they trying to work on me mentally, break me down, and have me talking reckless by the time we get to mid-August, after I'd seen a preseason game or two. I'm not going to do it, though. I'm going to just enjoy the ride. I'm not going to do it. There's something to be said about Daron Payne not having to play 92% of the damn snaps as a 305-pound defensive tackle. Aaron Donald won't doing that shit. Quinn Williams won't playing 92% of the damn snaps. Not when you got capable defensive tackles, or you at least supposed to. And he talked about, after he said that, he said, the last thing that he talked about was the buy-in and everybody being all in. He said, you know, it takes a selfless individual to understand that for the good of the team, I got to come off the field because in this particular instance, I'm not one of the best 11 that needs to be on the field for this particular situation, you know, and I got to swallow my pride and my ego, put that aside for the betterment of the team. And he's like, everybody's all in, you know. If this ain't your package, this ain't your package. And I want your stamina bar to go from orange back up to yellow or green, right? I don't want your shit in orange going close to red because you're not going to be the best version of yourself, right? Your gas tank is running on almost E. You down to that last quarter of a tank. How about you sit out a few plays, you know, get you a breather, take a knee, get you some water, catch your breath, get your wind, and get that stamina bar back up to green or yellow at least. Hey, we coming out the dudes. We rolling deep. I love it. I love it. Joe Whitt had me on one today. I ain't even going to front. I watched his press conference like 3 times. He had me on one today. Let's move on to the players now. Jamon Davis. He talked about being coached hard and how he really enjoys that, right? He enjoys having these coaches pour into him, coach him hard, get him where he needs to be. He understands this is a contract year. Like, it's a make or break for him. As a first-round pick, you don't want your rookie contract to be your most lucrative one. He's in danger of that having that happen. he needs a big season. He already knows they're not picking up his 5th-year option. That already has been decided. So this is his rookie. This is his contract year. He's got to go out and ball out, right? And I love that he's getting the opportunity to rush as a edge rusher, because that may increase his value, right? He's talking about having a chance to rush the quarterback. He's like, yo, it just allows me to play free and go after the quarterback, man. Go out there and just, get after it. And, he's talked about that in the past, wanting to, have more opportunities to blitz. And he even mentioned it in his presser today that, he has wanted this opportunity, but, that's outside of his control. He can only do what they ask him to do, right? He was asked about playing in a contract year. And, he said he's not thinking about it, just go out and play and let, the chips fall where they may. But everybody thinks about playing in the contract year. He said all the right things, though. And then he talked about Bobby Wagner as a leader and what he's learning from him. And he's not the first person that we've heard kind of echo those sentiments about Bobby Wagner and the kind of impact that he's had already in this brief, 2 months that they've been together. And he's already he talked about, learning about his work, his regimen, how he prepares, how he takes notes, how he studies, how he goes about attacking the day, how he goes about attacking a rep. A lot of guys have talked about Bobby Wagner's impact, and that leads to a larger discussion for me, which is, I think one of the things that the last group missed on was we didn't remember we were one of the younger teams in football. I think we figured out we were like the 10th youngest team in the NFL or whatever. So you're in the top third of the league in terms of youth. And I think what ultimately was one of the undoings of the team, because Ron Rivera, as we know, we're getting our brains bashed in by the Chicago Bears, embarrassing on a Thursday night. And, Melissa, I think her name is Katie Hartung, the sideline reporter for Amazon, broadcast, is like, what did you say to the players? Nothing. Nothing. We get our ass beat 27-0, spanked at the crib by the Chicago Bears. And I didn't say nothing, right? Because you need leaders to speak up in that situation. If you ain't going to say shit, somebody got to say something, right? And Ron wanted leaders. He talked about in Carolina, he got old. And remember, he told us when he got here, one of the first things he said was, I allowed the team to get old in Carolina. I will not allow that to happen in Washington. And he overcompensated for that in Washington. And because of that, while he still had some of those veterans that he loved from Carolina, like David Mayo, for instance, that he just, brought along for the ride, that he was comfortable with, he pretty much kept the roster extremely young. And it was the blind leading the blind. When guys who are on their rookie contracts are your leaders, like Terry, Jonathan Allen, those were your leaders. Those guys were on rookie contracts when Ron got here. None of those guys had been paid yet. They were still figuring out how to be pros themselves. How are you relying on them to be leaders, essentially? Like, one of the few guys that had been in the league and had been on a second contract that was in the locker room that was a veteran was Kendall Fuller. Outside of Kendall Fuller, we had a revolving door at quarterback. Hard to be a leader when, it's Alex Smith, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's Taylor Heineke. Like, there's no continuity. There's no leadership there. You're not even the starter every week. So, guys like Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas was a reserve tight end who converted from quarterback, who hadn't really made any real money, who wasn't even a real tight end in the NFL until we gave him a chance. How is he a leader, right? Like, we didn't have any true veteran leadership on this team. And it showed, right? And we paid for it dearly. Because when Montez Sweat left here, he said, guys aren't playing for each other. Nobody was playing for one another there. And he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. And a lot of that is the leadership in the locker room. And you're seeing that already. You're hearing that already from guys. Like, just the fact that Bobby Wagner's presence here. I remember Ron tried to do that with Thomas Davis his first year, but Thomas Davis wasn't playing for real. Like, it's hard for this ain't the NBA. You can't have Udonis Haslem at the end of the bench as a player coach and people respect him. This ain't the NBA, bro. If you ain't out here contributing, if you not helping get the job done, it's hard for me to actually respect what it is you trying to get across. So you're seeing guys like Zach Ertz, guys like Bobby Wagner having real impact on this roster. Even a guy like Jeremy Chin, who isn't a super veteran, but to a guy like Quan Martin, who's only in his second year, talking to a guy like Jeremy Chin, who's on his second contract, who's trying to prove himself in the league and has gone through, remember Jeremy Chin, his first 2 years, ridiculous. He finished second behind Chase Young in the defensive rookie of the year voting in 2020. Jeremy Chin's first 2 seasons, he started off like a goddamn rocket ship. And that shit exploded and the pieces fell back down to earth. And those last 2 years in Carolina, he was a forgotten man. That's how he ended up here in Washington. So he can tell you what it's like to be successful, but also to have that fall from grace. So he's got experience, right? And there are a number of guys that they brought in that can tell you different stories about coming up in the game and being a young guy and how you last in this league. A lot of those guys, this is their second contract. How you get to a second or a third deal, right? Dorrance Armstrong wasn't a first or a second or a third round pick. Dorrance Armstrong was like a 4th or a 5th round pick out of Kansas. I think he was a 4th round pick out of Kansas. I can tell you how to put this work in. I'm going to tell you, and I got some interesting things to say about Dorrance Armstrong. Matter of fact, let's keep going. Dorrance Armstrong is next. Look at that transition. He's the next one on the list. Dorrance Armstrong. So what I learned about him today, he's very measured and calculated when it comes to the words that he speaks. I'm very appreciative of that. Seeing what I've seen from a lot of players who don't want to do press conferences and how quickly they try to answer questions. Sometimes their answers are jumbled or they just repeat, a portion of the question that was asked to them and just kind of throw in a few words and a period at the end. And, that's how you get a, 3-minute and 47-second press conference or a 4-minute and 2-second presser, right? When guys are just trying to, blaze through this thing because they don't want to do it. And it's refreshing to have a guy who takes his time because he's a man of few words, but he takes his time. He thinks about what you asked him. He internalizes it. And then he spits out a response that makes sense, right? And I respect that about Dorrance because it's hard to really gauge who these guys are based off of their introductory pressers that we saw on Zoom. Because, you just got signed. It's the off season. You're happy to get the contract. That thing was stressful. You're happy to find a new home. But I really don't want to be here. I don't want to do this, right? Now you're out here with the fellas. You're back playing football, doing the thing you love. Now you get to kind of learn about some of these guys. And this is the time you're going to really learn about them because after a game, you lose a game, I might be pissed off. You might not get the best version of me. Now they're not taking score. I'm in a great mood. Everybody's laughing, kikiing right now because, everybody's 0-0 right now. So you're going to learn a lot about these guys right now. And I learned a lot about Dorrance Armstrong today. He talked about the staff and changes to the scheme and what sets DQ and Whitt apart from other defenses. I love this particular portion of his interview. To me, this was the meat and potatoes of Dorrance Armstrong and what he had to say. So he talked about the defense. They essentially asked him about the defense and what's different about it. Because remember, Dan Quinn, Joe Whitt Jr. said this is not going to be the same defense you saw in Dallas or you saw in Atlanta or you saw in Seattle. It's going to be different, right? It's going to be the Commanders' defense. It's not going to be any of those defenses. And Dorrance Armstrong was pretty much like, I don't know about that. But I can tell you this, what sets a Dan Quinn defense apart is just go watch it on tape. Watch how fast they fly to the football, how physical they are. That's not common in the NFL. And what have I always told you about Dan Quinn coach defenses? and why I was jealous of Dallas, or why I loved him in Atlanta, or why I loved him in Seattle. Especially in Dallas here recently. You've heard me say this a million times. I said, damn, they fly around, man. Like Dallas's defense, it doesn't look like our defense. It doesn't look like a lot of defenses in the NFL, but especially ours. Forget about everybody else's defense. I don't give a shit about what Denver's defense looks like or what, the Chargers defense looks like. I care what our defense looks like, and our shit don't look like that, right? We're not flying around. It's not 11 hats to the football. If somebody fumbles, it's like 5 cowboy helmets diving on that shit. When we force a fumble, we got nobody around. I remember in the Bears game, Logan Thomas was running, fighting for extra yards, and the Bears stripped him of the rock. And it was like 6 Bear defenders over there, no commanders to help him try to get the football back. And I'm just like, that so epitomizes who we are. We don't hustle. We don't have guys like, I see so many teams with offensive linemen running 12, 20, 30 yards down the field to push a pile. We never do that type of shit, right? We never have that rugby scrum that turns into an extra 7, 8 yards because our offensive linemen are 22 yards down the field pushing this shit, and the running back still churning his legs. And next thing you know, the officials haven't blown the whistle yet, and the yards are still being. We don't do that because we're not hustling, right? That's a team mentality thing. It ain't just defense. But defensively, you see it with Dan Quinn's defenses. And Dorrance Armstrong was like, just go watch the tape. That'll tell you all you need to know. Like, that's not common. And he took it a step further. He said, that's what they're implementing right now. And you're seeing it, and guys are buying in. But he said, this shit is not easy. He said, they force you to do things you don't want to do. But the reward is there if you do it. And he said, this is why every team ain't flying around like this, because this shit is hard. Arriving violently is hard. Fast and physical, that shit is hard. What's easy is loafing on the backside of a play. Or saying, hey, they got it. They don't need me. It's 4 of them already over there. Well, the 5th dude might be the guy to recover the fumble. Yeah, you need to be over there too. That's the easy one. It's hard to have everybody hustling to the football. And he's like, yo, this shit is not easy, bro. It's gonna take everybody rewiring their brain to do the things they're asking us to do. But if you do it, that's what it looks like. And that's the reward, having your defense be one of the best in football. I thought that was the most telling statement that we heard from him. He talked about changing the culture. So, I thought this was an interesting exchange. So, Scott Abraham asked him about the rivalry between Dallas and Washington. And, normally if somebody, acknowledges or agrees with what you're saying, as you're talking, you get a little head nod or something, or a smile or something. And when he said a rivalry between Dallas and Washington, he looked at him like with this blank stare, like, what rivalry? Philadelphia's a rivalry, but we beat the shit out of the Giants in Washington. Them shits ain't no rivalries to us. It wasn't no rivalries to us in Dallas. Only team we considered a rival was Philadelphia. That's how he was looking, right? So, and then Abraham continued on. And he said, clearly, Washington was down pretty bad, and Dallas was getting the best of them, and that's when he shook his head like, yeah, it wasn't really no damn rivalry. And he said, so how do you help change the culture to restore that rivalry? And he looked at him, and he looked at the, kind of looks forward, and he thought to himself, he's like, damn, that's a really good question. Like, part of the reason that I'm here and I followed DQ here was to help change the culture. And it's going to take a lot to change the culture. It's not going to be easy, but, if we want to beat teams like Dallas, that's what's going to have to happen. We're going to have to buy in. Everybody's going to have to do their part. And, we'll see what happens. But he was pretty much like, yeah, it's going to take a lot. And we went over in the division last year. We got swept by every team in the division. Let that shit sink in for a second. Like, You know, people still talk about a rivalry with Dallas, and people get mad at me when I say, what rivalry? What rivalry are you referring to? Because right now, this shit don't exist with us. They got a rivalry with Philadelphia. They don't consider Washington a rivalry. They don't expect Washington to jump up and bite them when it matters. They laugh at us. They laugh at the Giants. The Cowboys laugh at those teams. We got a better chance of beating Philadelphia than we do Dallas right now because of how we've played Philadelphia over the last few years. And we've always played Philadelphia. With Dallas, they always kick our ass or find a way. We've beaten Dak Prescott twice in like 12 to 13 chances, however many times we've played against him since he's gotten into the league. We beat him twice. Yeah, we'll beat him when he doesn't play. But when he plays, we get our ass cooked. That's got to change. That's got to change. And then he talked about Frankie Louie being a stud. He's like, yo, because they asked him a question about, you know, Joe Whitt Jr. talking about studs and what that means. And he's like, you want to talk about a stud? Frankie Louie, you should have saw his face light up when he talked about Frankie Louie. Like, I'm telling y'all, you've already asked me and I've already told you who I'm expecting big things from this season. If you're asking me who I think is going to be the standout on this defense, it's Frankie Louie, bro. Assuming health, knock on wood. I'm just assuming it. He's going to be the standout player defensively for this team. You watch. All right. So the next player we go to is Andrew Wiley, and I owe y'all a 0, man. He's our starting right tackle. Who are we kidding? Like, we can go ahead and put that shit. I'm gonna write it in pencil though. I want to be safe that I can erase it just in case. He's the starting right tackle. What are we talking about, man? We've heard nothing to refute this. This man is being a part of the interview process. They're not just letting anybody up to the mic, right? They're not just opening up the mic to random players who aren't going to be here. Like, Andrew Wiley is starting at right tackle. You guys were right. I was wrong. That's not the 0. I'm just going to tell you right now, those of you, there were so many of you, and I dismissed a lot of you. I argued with some of you, Derek B. and many of you who said, can we address the elephant in the room? Andrew Wiley's our starting right tackle. I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not. I went full Denzel Washington. No, he is not. If he is the starting right tackle, then we have a problem, right? And a lot of y'all looked at me and said, okay, if Andrew Wiley is the starting right tackle, I'm leaving here with something. I'm leaving here with something. And that something you're leaving here with is a 0. You'll get it down the line. I promise. As soon as we find out that, in fact, he is, which is coming. I know it. I told y'all this 2 weeks ago. When they told me that there was a left tackle battle, I was like, uh-oh. Actually, I started to doubt myself. When somebody did a great job of analyzing the thing that I kept bringing up, which was Adam Peters in Orlando at the league meetings. When he talked about the tackle position, he brought up some names: Trent Scott, Cornelius Lucas. Who he didn't name was Andrew Wiley. I was like, see, he didn't talk about him. See. And that person said, but actually, he was asked specifically about left tackle. And then I went back and listened. I was like, oh, you're right. My bad. And then when we heard that there was a left tackle battle going on, I said, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Got me. So, yeah. Anyway, Andrew Wiley writes, Andrew Wiley talked about camaraderie in the locker room. And a lot of what he spoke about was building the chemistry, the camaraderie in the locker room. He talked about the O-line. I think it's more important with the offensive line than any other position on the field. That positional group needs to be in sync, because you hear this all the time, 5 guys moving as one. And they're essentially like a glove. You know, it's 5 fingers going into one glove and then moving as one, right? They have to be on the same accord. And so he's talked about them really building a bond with one another, going out to eat. You know, offensive linemen love to eat. So he said, as a matter of fact, we're going out to eat tonight. And he was like, Cole Luke was the one that kind of set it up. And he said, you know, those guys have been really receptive to all of the different things that they've done to kind of build that bond. He said, you know, the thing that's been crazy about practice is, he said, we really just enjoy being around each other. Dan Quinn is really to thank for all of this, because he's like, my locker in the locker room, I'm next to a defensive lineman and a defensive back. He's like, these are 2 dudes I would never talk to, right? What do I have to talk to a defensive back? And I don't know. So for those of you who have, you just assume if you're on the NFL, you're in the NFL locker room, oh, your teammates, you know everybody. No, not true. This isn't basketball. It ain't just 15 of y'all. It ain't intimate. It ain't baseball where it's just 20 of y'all. It's not intimate. It's 50. Like right now is 90 guys in the locker room. You can't meet everybody. I mean, you can if you went out of your way to, but nobody's trying to meet everybody, right? You stick with your group, you know, and then sometimes you get into the offensive room, but you don't mix it up with defensive guys a ton. Dan Quinn talked about this in his first press conference, you know, after he was hired. He talked about setting the table for guys to, and you go back and watch the Commander's Log, episode 1. And the first thing that they started with episode 1 was Dan Quinn setting the table, telling the coaching staff how he was going to make sure that they met each other, how they needed to get acclimated with one another, but the players also needed to do that. And that was his message to the team. Like, y'all are gonna really learn to love the dude next to you, because that's the guy going to war with you. And you got to be able to not only know that that guy has your back, but you got to know that guy off the field as well. That's going to help you put the extra added effort in when you might be dog tired, but I can't let this dude down, right? I can't let him down because I know him personally. So it helps with accountability. For those of you who have never been in a football locker room, and it doesn't matter at what level, especially if once you get to high school, it's a lot of dudes. You're not cool with everybody on the team because you don't even talk to half of the dudes on the team. So Andrew Wiley's saying, yo, I'm next to a defensive lineman and a defensive back. 2 dudes I would never talk to. But Quinn was intentional in putting guys next to defensive. You know, if you're on offense, I'm going to put you next to a defensive guy. You know, if you're on this side of the ball, I'm going to put you next to a guy that you probably would never communicate with so that you can get to know your teammates. Because I know you're going to be in the same room with the offensive lineman. You don't need to have a locker next to them. You see them all the time. You're going to see the quarterback. You're going to see the receivers. Y'all going to be in the offensive room together. I'll put you next to a defensive guy because you're not going to be around them a lot. So when you're thinking about taking his head off in August, you can remember, hey, that's my guy, right? I don't want to crush him. I don't want to take his helmet off and beat him with it because we've been practicing hard against each other 5 days straight and he getting on my damn nerves. I actually got a relationship with this dude. We teammates, right? A lot of that shit goes out of the window in the heat of battle, but still, you get my drift. So he talked a lot. And you know what he said? He said, bro, they brought back the ping pong tables. We got cornhole. They got the music playing. He said, we spent 2-3 hours after practice still at the facility. Dudes ain't even want to go home. That's the type of shit we on. And I said, you mean to tell me that bringing back the ping pong tables, adding in a cornhole table, you know, playing the music. Remember, Ron was against all this shit. The first thing Ron did when he came was he took the ping pong tables out of the damn locker room. That was his punishment. You guys have it too good. Took all the fun out. And, you know, Tressway and all of the specialists, that was their thing, getting that ping pong in, right? Tressway is the ping pong champ. But that breeds camaraderie. That makes the guys want to stay at the facility an extra hour or 2 after practice kicking it with their teammates. It's just the little things sometimes you don't think about. Ron thought he was doing good, but he was doing more harm than good. He taught Brandon Coleman, did Andrew Wiley. And Andrew Wiley said, yo, this Brandon Coleman kid is super talented, ridiculously athletic, and already really fundamentally sound. He's like, yo, that brother is going to play this year. He's going to play significant snaps somewhere this year. And I was looking at him like, he might be playing for your ass at some point. Andrew was like, well, actually, he's over at left. I'm at right, so I'm straight. But yeah, he might be playing this year. That speaks volumes. I believe in Brandon Coleman, and I hope he turns out to be what Adam Peters and company, think he can be. He tested really well, and we'll see if he turns out to be the kind of tackle that can help this team or whatever. Wiley said, look, the dude, his body type is built to play both tackle or guard, right? He could play either one. You can plug this dude in, and I think he can help at either one of those two positions. But, he's working at tackle right now, and I think he's got a chance to really help this team at the tackle position. So we'll see if that manifests itself or not. Then he talked about Tyler Biadasz and the importance of adding a veteran center like him to the mix. And he's like, yo, this guy is like the glue, right? And we heard from Biadasz today. We'll talk more about what he had to say, but he said it's really good having a guy like Tyler Biadasz around, and obviously that helps with a young quarterback as well. And he talked about wanting to run the ball more. He's like, man, as an offensive lineman, naturally you just want to run the ball more. He's like, it's not hard, it's not rocket science. You want to get off the ball, you want to be physical, you want to move guys out of the way, you want to keep the integrity of the pocket. But and at the end of the day, you want to run the ball, and it's something that we didn't do enough of last year. A little veiled shot at the staff last year, and specifically the offensive coordinator. But at the end of the day, are you surprised by any of this? No, I'm not, because Sam Cosmi spoke up last year and said, hey, we'd like to run the ball more. Just as we start getting lathered up and we get 2 runs in a row and we get excited, then we throw it 56 times in a row. So, yeah, it's no secret that this group would like to run it more, and hopefully they get that chance this year. I can't say that they will, but I'd like to think that they will. I'd like to think that they won't be throwing it 52 straight times in a game like we did last year against the Bears. But we will see. Quan Martin talked about communication between he and Jeremy Chinn, and how that's going and how that's helping him as a player. He said he's leaning on Jeremy Chinn for a lot of things, and those guys are communicating well. And he said he's being challenged by the staff. Remember, I talked about Joe Whitt Jr. saying that this needs to be a chatty defense, and he's challenging his players to communicate and over-communicate. And Quan Martin is one of those dudes that, needs to communicate as a safety on the back end, that you particularly have to be locked in and make sure everybody's on the same page, because if anybody on the back end is confused, that's where the big plays usually happen. If you're confused up front and you don't do something on a pass play, so what, right? That's not what's going to lead to a 67-yard touchdown. It's the guys on the back end being confused, because all it takes is for one dude to be playing cover 2 and everybody else playing, cover 3, or everybody else playing man to man, and now you got a dude running down the sideline wide ass open, and he thought it was cover 2. So that's how defensive breakdowns happen, when there's a lack of communication. So he talked about that with him and Chinn talking. He said he was asked where he was playing, and he was like, I'm pretty much just playing safety. Like, they're not really moving me around a ton. I'm not playing nickel because we got one now. We don't need you to do that anymore. He's like, yeah, I'm just pretty much playing safety. So we'll see what they ask him to do. But he strikes me as a guy that can play that back end and give them that kind of. I'm not saying that he is him, but he gives you that Earl Thomas type of flexibility back there with his ability to run sideline to sideline, right? Red line to red line. So I think they see him as a guy because all of them can run. Jeremy Chin can run. Quan Martin can run. Defoe can run. Percival Butler. All of these dudes are sub 4.5 40 dudes. So none of our safeties are slow. So all of them can run. But I think Quan Martin probably gives you the best combination of ball skills and anticipation and all of that stuff. So I think he is the guy that's going to be back there as the deep single high safety a lot of times if they're going single high looks. And then he talked about the coaching staff. He said this is a great coaching staff. And I harken back to that because we heard that from a number of players. We even heard it from Joe Whitt Jr. complimenting the staff, the defensive staff in particular, and saying how they haven't gotten enough credit for what they've done. And I think, hearing the players repeat over and over again, this is a great staff. Jeremy Chin, who I'm going to talk about next, he even talked about the staff as to why he's even here in Washington in the first place, right? So, you keep hearing everybody talk about how great the staff is. We already were excited about it, but hearing the players say it, which is what matters the most, it's kind of reassuring, and it continues to hammer home the point that this offseason was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Like, I've enjoyed myself this offseason as a fan. For years of being deprived of just being happy about what the team is doing in the direction that they're heading in, it feels so good. An offseason like this is decades overdue, right? At least a decade overdue. It's this offseason, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. I really have. Jeremy Chin talked about the coaching staff being the main reason he's here. So he's like, the reason I'm here is because of Dan Quinn, because of Joe Whitt Jr. He talked about Coach Simmons, right, who I thought was a really big hire because after they hired Joe Whitt Jr., one of the first dudes he went and got was Simmons from the Raiders. And, they had a working relationship already. And he's like, that's my right-hand man. And so a lot of people, like I talked about us getting guys in specific roles that I don't recall us having. Now, some people's like, hey, actually, we had that guy on this staff last year, and this is who he was, and this was his title. I'm like, I don't remember that. I don't remember a lot of these dudes. Like, Simmons is the pass game coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator. I don't remember us having that last year. Now, we may have had one of those last year. I don't recall us having a defensive pass game coordinator. So, I don't remember us having an offensive, pass game coordinator last year. Maybe we did. I just don't remember guys having specialized roles and not having one guy be three different things. Like, I know, Juan Castillo did like three different jobs. I ain't talking about having your coaches be, multitaskers. No. Having one guy's job specifically be just this. Specialized roles, individualize what guys do. And he's like, Jeremy Chin was like, I was with Coach Simmons my first 2 years in the league. Anybody remember what I said earlier? Jeremy Chin's first 2 years in the league were what? His best 2 seasons in the league. So he's like, I see Coach Simmons. I see Dan Quinn. I know his track record with guys with my skill set, big, physical, athletic. I saw what he did with Cam Chancellor. I saw what he did with the Legion of Boom. I saw what he was doing in Dallas. I've seen what he did in Atlanta with guys like Keon O'Neal and guys like that. Where the hell do you think I want to go? And they got Coach Simmons, who I spent my first 2 years in Carolina with, who helped me become the best, version of myself in the NFL. No brainer. I'm going to Washington. Like, we talked about this a lot in the offseason, that part of the reason that a lot of the guys chose to come to Washington was because of the staff. You can't ignore this, right? Like when we started talking about, Ben Johnson and him not taking the job and Dan Quinn getting the job, it starts at the top. It starts with ownership and Josh Harris and Magic Johnson and Mitchell Rails and all of those guys, right? Starts with them at the top. And then they hired Adam Peters. And it was because of Adam Peters' presence, he was able to then get a guy like Dan Quinn. Because remember, Dan Quinn had opportunities to take coaching jobs. This is not the first offseason where Dan Quinn was a hot commodity and teams wanted him. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to wait for the right opportunity. He felt like this was the right opportunity here in Washington because of Adam Peters. Then you get Dan Quinn on board, and you get guys like Joe Whitt Jr. to come here. You get guys like Cliff Kingsbury to come here, right, because of Dan Quinn, right? And then you get all these other coaches who have ties to the other coaches, and they come here because of the other coaches. And then you get the players who come in, like Bobby Wagner was like, yeah, I rock with DQ, and I love DQ, but my favorite coach is Ken Norton. That's a big reason why he's here. Ken Norton's only here because of Dan Quinn. You see how this works? Jeremy Chinn's like, yeah, I rock with Dan Quinn. He's cool. I like what he did from afar, and I watched it, and I respect that. But Coach Simmons, I rocked with him my first 2 years when I was at my best. That's part of the reason why I'm here. Zach Ertz is like, yo, I love what they're doing here. They've done so many different things. This is a totally different organization than the one I remember when I was in Philadelphia, but I'm here because of Cliff Kingsbury. Like, you Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biadasz, they all said, bro, I'm here because of DQ. Like, Dante Fowler Jr. said, I'll run through a brick wall for this man. He knows that. DQ is my guy. So, anyway, he talked about him being, and that just harkens back to the staff. So many players have mentioned how good of a staff this is. And I don't have a problem taking shots at the last staff because they were awful. But it's just another example of hammering home the point that the staff that was here previous was garbage. Straight trash. He talked about he and Quan Martin communicating, which we already talked about when Quan talked. And then he talked about his locker being right next to Jaden Daniels. Again, another one of these Dan Quinn masterpieces, right? Putting an offensive guy next to a defensive guy and, having them bond a little bit. And he said Jaden Daniels, him and Jaden have, had multiple conversations because their lockers right next to each other. And Jaden is picking his brain like, yo, what did you see when I did this or when I did that, kind of, trying to see if he's got tells or, as a defender, what are you looking for from a quarterback to tell you when to do this so, he can get better at disguising things and vice versa. And Quan's like, and Jeremy Chinn is like asking him like, as a quarterback, what are you looking at? What are things that you try to pick apart to figure out what it is we're doing? So they're kind of picking each other's brain, going back and forth. And that's a healthy dialogue. And that's another one of these Dan Quinn gems of putting players next to each other that wouldn't normally be next to each other to kind of foster and build that camaraderie. Tyler Biadasz, most of what he talked about was helping reset the culture. He talked a lot about coming here from Dallas with Dan Quinn and Joe Whitt Jr. and the company and helping establish a new culture here in Washington. And he's like, it starts with, bonding with the players in the locker room and getting to know one another and really establishing those relationships, building those bonds that are unbreakable with your teammates. He's like, we didn't know these dudes last year, right? And all of a sudden, these are the guys you're hanging out with, spending a bunch of time with. And that's how you build that bond so that it's so strong off the field that when you get on the field, I know how you move. And again, it's just that accountability piece. you don't want to let the guy that you just went bowling with, him and his family 3 nights ago, you don't want to let those dudes down, right? I don't want to let him down. I can't look him in the eye if I didn't give my maximum effort when I knew that they were running this twist and I got a piece of this guy, but I didn't bust my ass to get back and bail my guy out. He's counting on me to get a piece and then come over here and wash this guy out of here and keep the integrity of this pocket. And if I don't do my job, I let him down. Not only did I let him down, I let the whole team down. And that's that accountability piece. That's how you change the culture, right? So he talked about building chemistry up front. Can't be understated. Andrew Wiley talked about the same thing, going out to eat, all of that good stuff. He talked about it being competitive as hell in the 11 on 11s. This, remember, is the first time we had 11 on 11s this offseason. So he talked about the 11 on 11s. And he said, man, we were getting after it, bro. Like, we was really going after one another on these 11 on 11s and really putting it, you know, like all the things that we had done this offseason, we were putting it to use. We were putting it to work. And he said it was fun to compete against one another. We'll see how fun it is when it gets to, you know, late July into early August and those dog days of summer and camp start to hit. See if they're still having fun, if they're still singing Kumbaya. But he said it was fun to compete in 11 on 11s. And he said they were out there getting after each other in 11 on 11s today. Remember, this is the first time, as I said already. He said they're building a brotherhood in the locker room. So continuing on that, changing the culture, building bonds and all of that stuff, building chemistry. And then he said, and this kind of goes back to what Andrew Wiley said. And again, I tell you, and I said this earlier, when you start hearing guys say the same things, you know it's true, and you see that there's messaging, or you see that the things that they're preaching is starting to come to fruition. He said that after the 11 on 11s, they were so amped. He said, man, we came back in the locker room and we were bullshitting for 30, 45 minutes, just talking about what we had just done on the field. You know, did you see this? Or did you see that play? Or did you see when I did this to this person? Or did you see what happened when this happened? And he's like, yo, you know, practice was over. Guys could have went home, but we was just sitting there kicking it for like an hour, you know, talking about practice, talking about, you know, a bunch of other things. So again, you're starting to see the effect of what Dan Quinn implemented in that intentionality of putting different players next to one another in the locker room, making sure that you're learning about your teammates and, you know, establishing relationships with guys that you may normally not interact with in the locker room. It's starting to pay dividends, I think. And then this one threw me for a loop. And I'm going to say something that I haven't said all offseason. I've been somewhat dismissive of this trio: Jamison Crowder, Olamide Zaccheaus, Damiere Byrd. I've been very dismissive of them because I was like, you know, they could have done more at receiver if they wanted to. And them going the Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder, and Damiere Byrd route, it seemed a little bit lazy to me, right? That said, I actually like OZ a lot. I've talked about Olamide Zaccheaus over the years. If you've watched my program when he was in Atlanta, I thought he was really good for the Falcons. As a matter of fact, I thought he was emerging as a, you know, solid number 2 receiver in this league that the Falcons were going to be able to count on for a number of years. And then he just kind of fell out of favor in Atlanta for whatever reason. He moved on from Atlanta. I think he ended up in Philadelphia. I want to say it was straight to Philadelphia from Atlanta. It could have been like Tennessee, somewhere in there. Then Philadelphia. I feel like he went from Atlanta to Philadelphia, though. And he was solid last year for the Eagles. You know, I remember 2 big plays he had. One was against Tampa Bay in like week 2, or I think it was week 3 of the season when they beat Tampa Bay in Tampa on a Monday night in a sloppy game, but the Eagles won, and Olamide had a big catch for a touchdown. And then you could argue one of the biggest plays of the Eagles season. One of them was that touchdown catch he had against the Buffalo Bills in that epic overtime thriller that the Eagles pulled out. So Olamide Zaccheaus had some, big catches for the Eagles. He can play some ball, man. I'm going to say this right now. I haven't said this all season. Of that trio, Damiere Byrd, Jamison Crowder, Olamide Zaccheaus. Zaccheaus, to me, is the front runner to make the team. If I'm choosing one out of those three players, give me Olamide Zaccheaus. And this is what put it over the top for me. I started to think to myself, one, he's got experience with Dan Quinn before. That's number one. That's why part of the reason why he's here. And two, if he can play special teams, and they brought up special teams at least 3 times in his presser today, and he made mention of it, and he kept saying, I'm confident in my abilities. If I took nothing away from his press conference, but one thing, it was that he's very confident in his abilities because he said it at least 7 times, right? And if that confidence has anything to do with being a return man of any sorts, that means punts and or kickoffs, welcome to the roster, right? Welcome to the Commanders, Olamide Zaccheaus, because they're dying for somebody to step up and be a return man. They're dying for somebody to step up and say, hey, I got you. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of both of them joints, punts and kickoffs. If Olamide Zaccheaus stands up and says, hey, I can do both of those, what are we talking about? We got our guy, right? Because he's also better than Crowder and Damiere Byrd at receiver already. He wins if we're just talking about pure receiver. He's better than those two. I would even argue he's better than De'Ami Brown. Like, if we just talking about pure receiving skills, I think Olamide Zaccheaus is the 4th best receiver on the team. So but that wasn't my problem with him. My problem was, do you add other value to the team? That if you're going to be on the back end of the receiver group, you got to add more than just being a solid receiver. That was the problem with Dax Milne. When we were talking about him, like, bro, if you don't add any value anywhere else, you can't be the 6th receiver on this team. And he's like, well, I return punts. And he's like, yeah, about that. Not exactly. Not exactly. He's like, but I do return punts. If you need some extra value, there it is. And they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. So I'm going out on a limb, and I'm saying OZ is making his roster. So that's 5 receivers right there. In my mind, in my estimation, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, and Olamide Zaccheaus is their 6th receiver. I think they're going to keep 6. And now you got to figure out who that last guy is between Mitchell Tinsley and Rosemy, Jack Saint, and Jamison Crowder and Damiere Byrd and all those guys that they have. And don't forget about Kazmir Allen. If he learned how to catch over the last offseason, if he's not afraid to return punts anymore, if he can actually catch punts, that's his path to making the roster. Don't rule him out, because we already know he's a dynamic kickoff return man. If he can somehow return punts, all of a sudden he could have a role here. We'll see. Anyway, I digress. So Olamide Zaccheaus talked about the new special teams rules. So he referenced that enough times to make me think that he has a role potentially on special teams. Like, he's going to return kicks, punts, and kickoffs potentially. Because he kept referencing the new rules. He's like, look, I don't really care. I'm indifferent about it. I'm just trying to help the team any way I can. I know what I'm capable of doing. And so I ain't really too pressed about it. He talked about being close to home. Like, again, sometimes these reporters don't do their homework. JP Finley, once again, I hate to beat up JP, but JP had a couple of blunders today. This one, he was like, how's the transition been to DC? And Olamide is like, bro, I played at he didn't say this, but he kind of insinuated like, bro, I played at UVA. Like, it's 2 hours away in Charlottesville. Like, I know this area. I was here for 4 to 5 years of my life. I'm pretty comfortable being here. So this isn't a big transition for me. But he's like, it's good to be close to, where I went to school, right? So, this is good for Olamide in terms of location. And then he talked about having a chance to make the roster and help change the culture. And you hear a lot of guys who played for Dan Quinn previously talk about wanting to help come in and change the culture, because DQ is such a culture building coach. Even Atlanta Falcons fans will tell you, like, we don't buy Dan Quinn as a great X's and O's head coach, in-game strategist, yada, 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 which, I'm hoping he's grown since his time in Atlanta. And that's why you put all of these coaches around you. And he talked about trying to do too much his first stint. And he's like, one of the things I wanted to do differently was delegate, which is why he wanted to have a strong bond with a general manager the next time he got a head coaching gig, which is where Adam Peters comes into play. He said he wanted to delegate more because he was doing too much. He had his hand in too many different, game day responsibilities, and it affected the team in the way, remember, Dan Quinn was notorious for blowing leads. That was the running joke about Dan Quinn. It seemed like they couldn't hold on to big leads when he was in Atlanta. And, obviously none bigger than the Super Bowl and 28-3, which they'll never live down. But, he blew a big lead against Dallas when he was in Atlanta. He blew big lead after big lead after big lead. It was one of the things that he didn't do well. And so a lot of fans will tell you that from a culture standpoint, you won't find a better communicator, culture builder than Dan Quinn. It's the game day shit that, worries me. That's what a lot of fans that have experienced Dan Quinn, as a head coach have to say. But I'm hoping that times have changed. He's learned, and he's talked about, learning valuable lessons and if he got a chance to do it again, remember, if I got a chance to do it again, these are the things I would do differently. But one of the things that he seems to have mastered is building a culture. And every single player to a man that has played for Dan Quinn before, you hear them say, I want to come here and help change the culture. Whether it's Tyler Biadasz from Dallas, whether it's Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas, Dante Fowler Jr. mentioned that way back when in his introductory presser, I believe. Olamide Zaccheaus mentioned it today. And you hear a number of guys talk about, I want to help change the culture, right? Bobby Wagner obviously has said that. And so I don't think that's on accident. And I just want to say this too. I don't think it's on accident that Olamide Zaccheaus got a press conference. There, I said that too. They could have allowed a lot of guys to speak. There are plenty of guys. They could have talked to De'Ami Brown today. They chose Olamide Zaccheaus. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Anyway, that, my friends, is the final OTA media session, essentially, as you hear from a number of players and coaches. Lot of good information gleaned from that. Lot of big takeaways. And one of my big ones there is I think Olamide Zaccheaus is going to make this football team. You don't have to agree with me, but Andrew Wiley's our starting right tackle. I'm going to have to offer up a double O down the road. I think Olamide Zaccheaus is going to make this team. Jamon Davis as an edge rusher. I'm intrigued. I cannot tell a lie. I am intrigued. You got my attention, right? Like Dave Chappelle when he was telling those, reading off those movie scripts. You got my attention. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to some of these things taking place. Joe Whitt Jr. is the defensive coordinator. Are you kidding me? I'm excited. Anyway, let's get to the comment section so I can get y'all out of here. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, is it premature to call JD5 the franchise savior? Yeah, it's premature because, I mean, who are we kidding? That's what they drafted him to be. But we need to see it first before we can put that kind of weight on that kid's shoulders. But yeah, I mean, everybody involved knows what this is. We haven't had a franchise quarterback here in over 3 decades, excluding Kirk Cousins. I know a lot of you don't want to count him, but that's the closest thing we've had to a franchise quarterback in the last 3 decades. It's almost been 4 decades because, again, Joe Theismann, broke his leg in 1985. We haven't had a quarterback here as a franchise quarterback since Joe T. That was 85. Next year will be the 40-year anniversary. So, yeah, you do the math. Yeah, that's how he's going to be pegged. But I'm not looking to put that weight on his shoulders yet. Let's see what he can do first. But yes, that's what they drafted. When you spend a number 2 overall pick on a quarterback, yeah, that's what you're hoping he is. And it's a little bit different for us because most organizations who draft a quarterback 1, 2, 3, top 5, whatever, they haven't been in the quarterback wilderness as long as we have, right? They've had somebody that's been a franchise quarterback for them in the last 2 decades at least. We're almost at 4. So it's a little different from us, for us, rather. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, Lou, I have to ask, where is all of this faith in defense coming from? I understand that our defense can't get any worse, but didn't we have the same optimism for Ron and JD? I didn't. You might have. I always told you that this defense never felt good to me. You can go back and watch my videos, especially last year in particular. I told y'all I had more confidence in the offense than I did defense. I told you defensively I was nervous because this defense was never good. Even the years that they were good, go back to 2020, Jack Del Rio's first year. The defense wasn't good. We played bad teams, and they feasted off of bad quarterbacks like Nick Mullins, Finley when he was with the we tore Joe Burrow's ACL, and we had Finley finish up that game, and we beat him up. Let's see. The Cowboys had Ben DiNucci one game and Andy Dalton the second game, and we beat those 2 up pretty good. The Eagles were going through, Carson Wentz was going through a mental breakdown. We started that actually in week 1 when we sacked him like 8 or 9 times. So they were awful at quarterback. The Giants, we continued to struggle with them. It just didn't matter who they had at quarterback. We just continued to struggle. They swept us that year with Daniel Jones. But, yeah, I mean, those were the level of quarterbacks that we beat up on. Hell, we still couldn't take advantage of Teddy Bridgewater when he was with Carolina. He came in here and beat us up. We weren't a good defense. We just took advantage of some bad offenses. And those were the games where they showed up and played well. And then, yeah, you had the Steelers game against Ben Roethlisberger. But remember, that was a house of cards, that Steelers team was. And we started their downfall. They were undefeated when we played them. And then we beat them. And then everybody beat them. And then they got blown out in the wild card weekend game at home by the Browns, right? Like, even Ben wasn't himself by the time we got to him. He was a shell of himself, and their season was going down the tubes, and we just expedited the process. So our defense wasn't good that year. And our defense wasn't good. Remember, Brady carved us up for like 500 yards passing, and if Chris Godwin could catch, that game wouldn't have even been close. They would have scored 40 some odd points, and Brady would have had 5 touchdown passes, and he would have had 500 and something yards passing in that game. Our defense wasn't good. 2021, A lot of you fell for the banana and tailpipe because it was good in 2020. And I said, hey, I'm still not buying it. They're going to have to show me they can do it 2 years in a row. And then they were awful. They finished up a little bit better towards the end of the year. And some of you guys somehow convinced yourself that this defense was better without Chase Young and Montez Sweat because guys were more disciplined. Like, whatever, dude, right? 2022 came along. They played better defensively, but it wasn't because we were good. I remember I kept telling y'all this. Our defense isn't good. We're getting lucky. Aaron Rodgers came in here and missed receivers. There was a 4th down where we had miscommunication. Rodgers had a wide receiver open down the sideline for a touchdown. He forced it to his guy on 4th down, and Kendall Fuller was able to break it up. If he'd have just looked down the field, he had a wide open receiver for a touchdown. We weren't good defensively. Teams made mistakes against us. The Colts, they should have beat us. We came back, took the lead, and we let Sam Ehlinger cook us, and he's got a wide open Michael Pittman Jr. with not only the ability to catch, but to run. They still had a timeout. He would have run that ball into Washington territory, called timeout, and they would have just needed 8-9 yards for a field goal. They would have beat us, and he dropped it. We got lucky in 2022, and I talked about that. So you want to know where my optimism comes from this defense? One, the talent is there. We were never this talented under Ron Rivera at any point, Jay Gruden under any point, going all the way back to the Shanahans in any point. This is the most talented collection of defenders, even without true edge rushers outside of Dorrance Armstrong. This is the most talented collection of defenders that I can remember, front 4 at least, or excuse me, front 7 at least. But I'll throw Jeremy Chin in there. But even hell, we got a nickel corner that I'm extremely high on, and Mike Stain was still. I told you, all the guys I wanted. This is why I'm so high on the defense. All the guys that I wanted, they went out and got because I know they can play ball. All right. I wanted Michael Davis. I told y'all we should go get Michael Davis. They went and got him. I said we should go get Jeremy Chin. They went and got him. I said we need to go get Frankie Louvu. They went and got him. I wanted Bobby Wagner. I didn't think we would get him. I said, what the hell would Bobby Wagner want to do coming here? Somehow we managed to get him. I'm still shocked that he's here, right? We still got Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. They added Johnny Newton. They added Mike Stain was still. Like, I'm really confident in this defense. And not just this defense. Seeing if Forbes can bounce back. Quan Martin year 2. I'm confident in Quan Martin. I saw good things from him at the end of his rookie season. You're damn right I feel good about this defense. But above all else, they're going to be coached well. I know what a Dan Quinn coach defense looks like. I know what it looks like. Everywhere he's gone, it's looked the same. Fast, physical, and ferocious. And generally, on a Dan Quinn coach defense, their biggest issue is they can be run on because they're light in the middle. They don't have a Jonathan Allen or Deron Payne. Well, we've already got that solved, and we have a Johnny Newton. And we have a John Ridgeway. And maybe even a Fedarian Mathis. I don't know if he'll come into play or not. But we're good in the middle. We're not going to be light. Like, Cowboys fans are searching for a defensive tackle that can plug the middle, play the run, because they've been soft in the middle because Dan Quinn likes his guys undersized. Well, we got agile, athletic guys that are also big, so we don't have that issue that they had in Atlanta, that they had in Dallas. So you want to know why I'm so confident? We have the pieces and we have the staff. Now we just got to go get the actual results. And I feel confident that they can do it. They're not afraid to switch it up. They're not afraid to use guys in different situations like a Jamon Davis as an edge rusher. They're going to put together packages. You heard what Joe Whitt Jr. said today. We don't have 11 guys as starters. We got 17 to 18 guys that we're going to roll out there. We coming and we rolling up deep, looking to wreck shop, looking to whoop people. That's why I'm confident. I don't know what the hell this offense is going to be. I'm not bullish on the offense. I'm damn sure bullish on this defense, though. And if they're not good this year, I'll be shocked. One thing I do know is that Dan Quinn coach defenses usually are really good. That's what I do know. And I do know that Frankie Louvu is a dog, and Jeremy Chin is a dog, and Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are dogs. And even at this, advanced stage of his career, Bobby Wagner is a dog. And I know Dorrance Armstrong is going to get after it. I'm confident that we got guys out there that are going to be able to make plays. Mikey Sainristil is a dog. That's why I'm confident. We'll see what happens. But I don't know who told you. I don't know where you get this narrative of didn't have the same optimism for Dan Quinn or for Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio's defense. Not we. I was excited when Jack first got here in 2020. And after that 2020 season and I saw what he was doing, I was excited about beating up on those bad, because at least we were doing that. At least we were exploiting bad offenses and bad quarterbacks. We weren't doing that before. At least we were doing that. That was short-lived, though. That was short-lived. Because even the young quarterbacks, the bad quarterbacks like Sam Ehlinger, even they were cooking our ass. If not for turnovers, we would have lost to Sam Ehlinger and the Indianapolis Colts. Remember, they fumbled the ball twice. Jonathan Taylor had a fumble. Then remember, your boy had that jet sweep that if he just runs to the corner, he scores a touchdown. Instead, he cut it up, and Cam Curl and somebody else hit him and stopped him from scoring a touchdown. And they had to settle for a field goal. That's what even gave us a chance to go down and have the Terry McLaurin played to set up the touchdown, right? Remember, Sam Ehlinger had that fumble when nobody pretty much touched him. He was running and the ball slipped out of his hand. Like, they did dumb shit. We should have lost to Sam Ehlinger in his first career start. Defense was trash, man. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, my guy. Video channel writes, my prediction, Lou: 1, Eckler will average at least 13 touches a game. 2, Ertz 60 catches. 3, Stromberg proves to be a strong starting caliber guard. 4, Forbes will play about 60% of the snaps at most. And 5, Armstrong with 10 sacks. Those are some pretty lofty expectation and goals that you've set for some of these guys. I can see Eck getting 13 touches a game. 6 to 7 in the run game, another 6 to 7 as a receiver. Sure. I can see that. Ertz, 60 catches. That's a lot of catches for the tight end position. Tight ends are a young quarterback's best friend, but we'll see if, 1, he's got to stay healthy. 2, Ben Sinnott is also going to probably take some of those opportunities away from him, but we'll see. You might be onto something there. 3, Stromberg proves to be a strong starting caliber guard. Remember, Charles Leno Jr., after he was cut from here, said, hey, Ricky Stromberg can play. They're going to find that out. We'll see. We'll see what happens. 4, Forbes will play about 60% of the snaps at most. We'll see, what 60 means. Normally, corners, if they're good and they're on the field for pretty much all of the snaps, corners generally don't come off the field. So if he's only playing 60% of the snaps, that means he's platooning with somebody out there on the field. But we'll see, We'll see what ultimately ends up happening with him. And then Dorrance Armstrong, 10 sacks. That's a lofty number. He's never had 10 now. He's been trending towards 10. The last 2 years, the number has gone up. We'll see. If he gets to 10, that is an awesome season, because we haven't had an actual pass rusher hit 10 sacks here since probably Ryan Kerrigan did it. Probably about, I don't know, Kerrigan probably last did it in maybe 19 or something, 18, 19, somewhere in there. Like, I know Deron Payne hit, 11 and a half sacks 2 seasons ago, but I'm talking about an actual edge rusher. I think the last edge rusher to do it was Kerrigan. And you probably got to go back to 2018 or 19. to see Kerrigan get into doubles figures. It couldn't have been 19 because 20 was his last year here. And they released him in 2021. Then he went to the Eagles and then he retired after the 21 season. So it's got to be like 17 or 16 probably. It was the last time Kerrigan had double-digit sacks. And he was the last edge rusher to have double-digit sacks here in Washington because Chase Young never did it and Montez Sweat never did it. That's a lofty statement right there. That's a big statement. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, once again, thank you for your generosity. Greatly appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for the support, Chris, who writes, "Hey, Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. 2 questions. 1, with training camp starting next month, what is your biggest question that needs to be answered? 5 on O-line, number 1 corner, kickoff/punt returner, kicker is going to be, so we'll dive into that." And he says, 2, what are reasonable expectations for Bobby Wagner this season or this year? So the biggest question, without a doubt for me, is the O-line, because whatever they decide to do, however they set it up, that's going to be the key to everything on offense. Protecting Jaden Daniels, opening up holes in the run game. If this offense is to work, we need to have some semblance of a solid, fluid offensive line. There needs to be continuity up front, guys that we can rely on. Jaden is going to help with his athleticism. So if we see some of the OTAs that we saw early in the season last year from Andrew Wiley, Jaden Daniels is athletic enough to make a guy miss, extend a play, and at least throw it away and not take a 9-yard sack on first down and destroy an entire drive, right? So that helps. But, figuring out who the left tackle is going to be, figuring out who the left guard is going to be. We know who center is, and we know who the right guard is. And guess we know who the right tackle is too, and Andrew Wiley. So really figuring out the left side of the offensive line is going to be massive, what they decide to do there. And then hoping that group is cohesive. I'll even rank these for you. Now, the next most important thing, believe it or not, is going to be kicker, right? They got to figure that out, and we got to get a good kicker. I'm already on record as saying we're until we start scoring points consistently, kicker is a pretty big deal for us. Not that it's not for every team in the league. Even the good teams need good kickers. Part of the reason that they're good, Ravens, Chiefs, because they have really good kickers that they can rely on, that they can send out there for a 54-yard field goal, who doesn't miss a lot of extra points. That's a big part of why you're good. When Cincinnati is really good, shooter, what is his name? The kicker for the Bengals. He's really good, right? When they're really good, he's really good. So we need our kicker. And we're not the Bengals. We're not the Chiefs. We're not the Ravens. We don't score 34 or 38 or 45. We score 20 or 23 or 17 or 16. We need our kicker. So that's number 2. Number 3 would be, cornerback number 1. I don't even know if that's important, honestly speaking, because truth be told, whomever he is, he's probably going to get work at some point this season. I don't see any of our corners standing up and being dogs. We might be better in the slot this year, but, we got 2 of the best. We did this exercise on the podcast yesterday where we had our top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. 2 of the top 5 reside in this division, and we see them twice a year, in A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. So it really doesn't matter who you put at number 1. They probably going to get work, more likely than not. So with that said, you just hope that we get some pressure on the quarterback to alleviate some of the stress that's going to come from some of these receivers in the division that are going to be capable of cooking our guys in the secondary. You just hope that they can do a good enough job of preventing the big play, making teams earn it, and pretty much damage control, right? Like Fine, you gave up a 17-yard catch. Don't let it turn into a 34-yard catch. Don't let it turn into a 55-yard catch and run. Okay, fine, you gave up a 22-yard catch. Tackle him, right? Maybe we can force a field goal. Maybe we can still force a punt. Who knows what could happen? We could sack them on the next play and destroy the whole drive, and they got a punt, right? Just don't give up the 72-yard bomb, right? Like, don't give up the 43-yard touchdown. I think they can do that. I think they can keep everything in front of them and not give up the back-breaking plays that we gave up last year on a consistent basis. As far as the reasonable expectations for Bobby Wagner, again, I've made the mistake in the past of doing this, but he's built up enough equity that I can say this and feel good about it. I'm not looking for anything more than what he gave Seattle last year. Look, he's not who he once was as a linebacker. If he were, he'd still be in Seattle right now. They let him walk for a reason, right? But he's still a tackling machine. He's still a leader on the field. He still can provide us with everything that we need him to. Just go out there and be Bobby Wagner. Be healthy, be effective, be the field general, get everybody lined up. And then when the ball carrier comes to you, make the tackle like you've been doing for the last, 13, 14, 15 years, however long it's been. And if he can do that, that's all I'm looking for. If he leads the team in tackles, excellent, right? Because that means that the shit ain't getting to the secondary like it was a year ago, right? If your guys on the D-line or the linebacker position are making tackles, then we're keeping everything where it's supposed to be, right? We're capping runs where they're supposed to be. If it's a 2-yard run, it's a 2-yard run. It ain't an 8-yard run. That should have been a 2-yard run. So my expectations are just be who you were last year. I know your skills are declining and you're not the Bobby Wagner that was once an all-pro and one of the best, but you're still a damn good linebacker and better than probably 60% of the linebackers in the league. That's what I'm looking for. My boy Huncho 6. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My boy Huncho 6. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB Rights. Sup, Lou? Sup, my boy? I believe we surprised a lot of people this year. Joe hinted at the fact that our secret weapon is the fact that no one knows what to expect from this team. And in my opinion, that's what helps CJ Stroud and the Texans. Yeah, that helps, but that only carries you. But like he said, they'll know what we're about after week 1, right? Because now there's film out on you. And then you have to then adjust. And then you just got to play with consistency. The thing that's, you know what was funny about the Texans is people like myself, I'm guilty as charged, and I'm not afraid to admit it, is I was like, oh yeah, this Texan thing is cute. This is cute. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Yay, CJ Stroud playing really well. The Texans are, surprising everybody. All right, when does this party stop? When does the fun stop here? When do you finally realize, oh shit, we the Texans, we got a first-year head coach, we got a rookie quarterback. What are we doing? When does that happen? When does that kick in? And it didn't kick in because they kept playing their asses off and they kept exceeding expectations, like going on the road and out-dueling Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. CJ Stroud did that. Threw for over 400 yards in that game, and they needed every single yard and every single big throw to overcome a Cincinnati Bengals team that had won 3 in a row after starting the season off 0-3. They had rallied back, won 3 in a row, and were playing as good a football as anybody at that time. He went in there and cooled their ass off. Baker Mayfield throws a touchdown pass with like 52 seconds left in the game, and they think they've won in a shootout 38-30, 4 or whatever. And CJ Stroud comes back down the field, bing, bang, boom, touchdown, back of the end zone to Tank Dell, I believe. And they steal a victory from Tampa Bay like 43-38 or some shit like that. Or 41-38. That's what you got to do if you want to surprise people. You're going to have to make plays. You're going to have to, like, the element of surprise is gone after the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Now there's ample enough film out there for us to make the adjustment to the things that you're doing. Now it's up to your coaching staff to keep those things fresh, to make it look, like something else, but it's the same concept. Or your guys are just going to have to out-execute the opposition, outplay them, be more talented, be more physical, create turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. That element of surprise is only going to last you for the first month of the season. Mob Boy, Huncho 6. So we may surprise people to start the season off, but we're going to have to actually at some point beat them just off the strength of being who we are. We'll see if we can do that or not. Atomic Ant, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Atomic Ant writes, we got the QB right. Watch out. Watch out. Love the show since 2017. Can't wait for the season to start. You and me both. It'll be here before you know it. I'm just going to enjoy the summer. And as I said at the top of the show, I'm just going to enjoy this ride. Whatever this looks like this year, whatever we turn out to be, I'm just going to enjoy the process because I've been through it before. And, what's crazy is the last 2 times that I've been through it as a fan, I wasn't expecting early arrival to the party, but in both instances, I got early arrival to the party. And so I'm not expecting that this time, but if it happens, I will more than welcome it. I'm just looking to enjoy the process. Miss P, thank you for being a member for 32 months. Who writes, PSA, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for that PSA, Miss P, and good luck to your Celtics starting tomorrow night. Hopefully, y'all take care of business in game 1. Should be a fun series. I expect you guys to win. A lot of people are picking the Mavericks to win. We'll see what happens. I think this is your Celtics year. What would that be? Banner 18 that you're in pursuit of, I think? Or is it 16? One of those 2 numbers, right? Anyway, good luck. You're going to need it. That's good. It's going to be a hell of a series. But y'all heard her. PSA, like, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss anything. I can be pretty random. You don't know when some of these live streams are going to start. So turn that notification bell on so you don't miss a thing. And let me just add this in. Shout out to all of those who have registered for the LTN lifestyle trip to Dominican Republic, to Punta Cana. We're going to have so much fun. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys, chopping it up with you, having a blast, being competitive. I'm competitive as all get out. So we're going to do some competitive things, laser tag, go bowling, chop it up, have some drinks together, cut up a bit, turn up, all of that good stuff. Looking forward to having fun with you guys in the Dominican Republic. And so hopefully you'll be able to join us. But the link to that is in the description of this video. I know some of the mods, Ms. P in particular, has been putting that link in the comment section of the chat. So you have the link. It's on every video that I upload. So hit that link, sign up, register, and be a part of this trip, man. You won't regret it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you can join us. And shout out to those who have already registered for the trip. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Duncan writes, hey, Lou, I'm not trolling or being mean, but is it true your team was voted to be in last place? They also said you have no quarterback. I don't know who they are. I wouldn't be shocked if we were, voted to be in last place. I don't. It's either us or the Giants. And if you're talking about in the league, yeah, there were some. I've shown. I told you we're going to be disrespected. The disrespect is going to find us, and until we change the narrative, it is what it is. I can't get with us being, the 32nd rated team in the NFL, or, second to last, or any of that stuff. I can't see us being the bottom feeders of the NFL. Not with the way I think we're going to play defense this year. But to each its own. I know the disrespect is coming. We've earned it over the course of a quarter of a century. So bring it on. That's what I say. Bring it on. This is a young, hungry, dumb, team that doesn't know any better. They're young and dumb and don't know no better. We just hungry. We looking to come up in the game. So I expect this team to be in most ball games. Again, whether it yields us wins or not remains to be seen, but it is what it is. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, hey, Lou, love you, cherish you, and I want to be like you. Okay. That being said, come on, man. You got to be depressed about the Commanders. I'd jump off a bridge. Nah, man, I feel good. This is like, you picked the wrong offseason to want to like demean the team in the direction of where we're going and all of that stuff. Like, this is the wrong offseason for that. If you would have hollered at us 3 off seasons ago, when I know for me, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was penciled in as our starting quarterback, I had no hope in 2021 going into that season. Zero hope, right? Last year, thought we had a chance. The year before that, thought we had a chance, with Carson Wentz, and then with Sam last year, with Eric Bieniemy more specifically. But this year, I'm just going to have fun. Like, you can't rain on my parade, right? I feel really good about this offseason. This has been a tremendous offseason. One that I've enjoyed thoroughly, and I'm just going to enjoy the process. Feeling really good right now. Gary B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Gary B writes, our coaching staff is the X factor. They're the rising tide that lifts all boats. Much different from Ron and company, who were the destroyer of young talent. Facts, right? Facts. Like, they're the difference here. Yeah, I think we have better players in certain situations, but even with the talent that Ron and company had, right? Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Cole Holcomb. Like, if you would have given Dan Quinn that same group that they had back in 2020 when they first got here, a rookie Chase Young who was still confident, still healthy, a Montez Sweat going into his second season who was, coming of age, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, still getting after it, trying to chase after that first real big contract. Cole Holcomb, who I thought was still a really good linebacker that had a lot of untapped potential. Jamon Davis. They hadn't even drafted Jamon Davis yet in 2020. They would ultimately do that in 2021. And this group might have drafted somebody else instead of Jamon Davis, but whatever. Like, Kendall Fuller and Ronald Darby playing. Like, if you would have given them that group, they would have done wonders with them. Talent was definitely there at times, and the coaching staff is definitely the X factor. Getting the most out of what you have is the true mark of a great coaching staff. Whether it's not a ton of talent and getting the most out of what you have, or having a ton of talent and maximizing that talent and making your defense one of the best in football. Either way, it's on the coaching staff to put those players in that position to be successful. And then the players have to go out and execute. It's not all on the coaches, but the coaches have to have a plan. And our coaches didn't have that last year. Or for that matter, the entire tenure under Ron. There was never a plan really in place. And if it was stale. Swaggy P, been a member for 19 months. Really appreciate you. Swaggy P writes, the closer it gets to camp, the more excited I get. That's me every year. That's me every year. I'm guilty as charged. The closer I get to camp, the more excited I get, the higher the win total gets. That's not happening this year, though. I've already checked myself at the door. I had my one moment of weakness. That was on schedule night, and I've adopted schedule night now, the official schedule release purge. That is your one night to go crazy, talk reckless, talk out of pocket, talk about how we're going to win X amount of games. And then after that night is over with, you have to go back to normal. You have to go back to talking with sense. I did that. I had my purge. I'm back. Seven wins on the season. All right. But I'm definitely finding myself getting excited. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Duncan writes, yo, you on tomorrow too? I got a lot of no for you. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think I might be on. Well, no, I'm not going to be on tomorrow. Tomorrow is the game 1 of the NBA Finals. So, no, I won't be on tomorrow. There is a chance, though, I'll be back on Friday. There is a chance. It's a slim one, but there is a chance that I'll be back on Friday. Talking NBA Finals, setting the table for the weekend. Yeah, there's a chance I could be back on Friday. So, we'll see. Don't want to make any promises, though. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. They're trying to get me. Like Swaggy P, you fighting a good fight over there. They trying to get you too, right? I'm going to just enjoy the ride, right? I'm going to enjoy the process. I've been through this before, not with this particular team, but with other teams. And so I know how this goes, and I'm just going to ride the wave, man. That's the most enjoyable way to go about it. No expectations, no standard, necessarily. Well, no, there needs to be a standard set. I won't say that because I expect this team to play hard. I expect them to play fast and physical. I expect us to be in ball games. I expect them to be well coached. I expect them to minimize the amount of times they beat themselves. You're young. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to have, games where, damn, we made too many mistakes to win. That's the mark of a young team. I expect that. But there does need to be a standard set. There does need to start to be a semblance of what Commanders football is all about, what it looks like, what it stands for. So I won't say that there doesn't need to be a standard. There definitely needs to be a standard set. But what I won't do is put expectations on what the season's supposed to look like. I'm just going to enjoy the ride and ride the wave. All right. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a great night, rest of your night. Enjoy tomorrow. Enjoy game 1 of the NBA Finals. I will. And then we'll talk about game 1 more likely than not at some point, whether it's if it finishes in a reasonable enough time, I may jump on after the game is over, talk about it. If not, we'll just do it on the podcast on Friday if I can carve out some time for that. Either way, we'll be talking about that game 1 and maybe even previewing game 2 over the weekend, among other topics. So anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Have a good one. God bless. Good night.